boys are going to bring the heat today.
As the leader of the Booner Pack, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the up, boys.
It's pumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
Welcome to Crunch Time Sports with Jeff Booner. Lucas, it is Monday, February 10th, and we are live. Fellas, it was a great day. I feel like I'm public enemy number one. That's okay. We'll get into it all today.
Hey, we all have been there once in our lives, Jeff. Don't worry.
It'll be a great show. I cannot wait. We're getting to a lot of topics relating to what the Detroit Lions can learn from the Super Bowl. I'll get to my tweets, and now I'll get to actually be able to break it down for the people, which will be a great time. But I want to say to all the people that did reach out, we're like, hey, man, I got what you were saying, or commented down below, or hey, I get you. I get what you were saying. I do appreciate you guys. And the people that disagreed, I don't even really care, to be honest with you. I tweeted it out today because it was my honest opinion. I mean, we did our watch party yesterday watching the Super Bowl, and I thought about it all night. I mean, we covered this team from start to finish, and the thing that still sticks in my mind are things, now that the season's officially over, things that could have went potentially a different way. All right. And I know it's hard for people to really think of it because Brad can do no wrong. And people want to drink this man's bathwater, which, jokes aside, he's a great GM. He's a great GM. He's a top 5 GM in the National Football League. So Lions fans are lucky to have him. I want to make sure that's very clear because I know that gets lost in my tweet. Like all of a sudden I hate Brad Holmes because how dare I criticize thy Brad Holmes? But in all seriousness, he is a great general manager. I don't really feel like I have to state that, but for people that maybe assume that I just all of a sudden don't like the guy, he is an excellent GM. Now, just like every GM, there are things that he does wrong, right? Like he's not perfect. He is a human being. And there's things that fans, including myself, might not agree with or see things that he does or may not do and say, well, it works for this team. And that's something that I pointed out today. So let's get to the tweet. And then I'll explain my thought process behind it. And let's just open up this can of worms. So I tweeted this out today. Let's pull this up. So I tweeted out the biggest loser this morning after the Super Bowl is Brad Holmes. The Lions have taken unbelievable steps forward since new leadership arrived. My concern is how you operate and grow a startup company versus operating and growing a multi-million-dollar company are two very different things. The Detroit Lions are the $50 million company acting like they're still a startup. They're not the 3-win team they once were. I said, capitalize on the window of your best opportunity. The Eagles have done just that with being aggressive and prioritizing the trenches with great players. So I said that this morning, and little did I know. And I listen. Full transparency with you guys. The point of the tweet was Brad Holmes is the biggest loser of the Super Bowl. That was the point I was making. And to be honest with you, I couldn't help but watch this Eagles team last night be able to rush four. They blitzed one time, guys. And that was
blitz didn't even count. Yeah, it was a flag.
So they didn't blitz. They rushed 4 the entire night. And the people that are responding to me saying, well, the injuries this year, my point isn't even about the injuries. My point is throughout Brad's tenure. That's the point I'm making. It's not this season. Yeah, injuries are unlucky. It happens. It sucks. I'm not blaming anyone for that. My point is through Brad's tenure, right, after the 8-2 stretch, and I explained this today when I talked about it in a video, you go into that offseason. Now the momentum's here, right? Okay, that's when they signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which didn't really end up working out, but they also had a really good draft. If you go back, that's the draft where you took Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Sam Laporta. Okay, where's help on the defensive? Oh, yes, Broderick Martin, who is a bust. That was my point. Okay, going into that, you didn't really get the assets you needed to improve this defensive line. It was very obvious. And you're looking around the NFL. That's what wins, guys. It's very simple. I'm not acting like I'm smarter than Brad Holmes. The proof is in the pudding. You look around the league and watch any team, the Eagles last night, they were able to beat Mahomes because of what? They got to him. The Bucs were able to beat Mahomes because they what? They got to him. It matters. So that's always been, I guess, my thought process. And I don't think I share that thought process on my own. There's plenty of fans that think like me. Shout out to you guys. But it's about, hey, why is this team doing it? And why aren't the Lions doing it? And you're looking back and you're saying, man, like he has invested picks into this defensive line going back to his first year. Remember, the big thing with Brad was invest in the trenches, right? You draft Penei Sewell, you draft Levi, you draft Ali McNeil, and Levi's a bust. He was a second-round pick. Like, Ali McNeil ended up working out. In the following year, you get Aiden Hutchinson. Okay, great. That's an excellent pick. And then that same draft, you get Josh Paschal, who's a bust. Like, he has not panned out either. So my point is, through Brad's tenure, and I'm not even talking about going all in for Myles Garrett. Like, would that be great? Awesome. They are lacking on the defensive line. I get they have DJ Reader, and he was a good signing. He's solid, but he doesn't help you get to the quarterback consistently. Aleem, to me, is a good player, but Hutch, we're still in this is going to be year 5, and we're still looking for a running mate for Aiden Hutchinson, and that's where I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, dude, the Eagles draft Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis. In 2 years, they're already elite. They gave Bryce Huff all this money. Guys, he didn't play a snap yesterday. Huff, who they paid. Josh Sweat's already there. They have Brandon Graham came back. Like, if they're not, that should show Brad Holmes the importance of getting after the quarterback, A, but rushing for B. But man, what it can do in those type of games. Like, go back to the NFC Championship game. You're up 17 points. You can't get to Brock Purdy. And you're 12-5. And guess what? At the deadline, you traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like, you didn't even get anyone then. So it's been a problem consistently. And that's why when we get to this point where the Lions lose, I'm not saying they lost because of that. The injuries obviously hurt, but let's be real. Let's keep it a stack here. If they were fully healthy, that defense is so much better. Like, I don't care about the injuries. They are stacked on all 3 levels. They got defensive linemen everywhere. They have Zach Bond, who's a fucking special teamer. Now he's a all-pro Pro Bowler. But look at the secondary. They draft 2 rookies that are impactful. You drafted Taron Arnold, who wasn't that impactful. He was all right. And who you needed desperately to play, and he never played. And even when he did, he was awful. He played in garbage time. And Brad's done it before where he's drafted guys that have made impactful plays right away, but you can't draft projects anymore. You can't draft projects because Broderick hasn't worked. And even the guys you need to play, Hendon Hooker hasn't even played. I mean, what was the point of that pick anyway? And you're looking at guys like Giovanni Manu. He's never going to help you. And these are guys that are like 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks that can't help you. The Eagles drafted Milton Williams, whatever the hell his name is, in the 3rd round. He's great. So my point is, going forward, Brad has to prioritize this defensive line. That was the point I was making with the tweet. Although people, there's other reasons why people get upset. I get that. But that's the overall message of it. You have to, number one, get Hutch a running mate, whether that's Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, or you just trade up in the draft, go get somebody, but you got to start prioritizing it. Like, what happened after those first 2 years? You're focused too much on the offense, and the offense is already elite. Like, no more, wide receivers, no more running backs, no more fucking linebackers, no more projects in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds, no more guys that are hurt in college. Go get me pass rushers. That was the point I was making today, fellas, the importance of that, because Aiden is great. He is. But I want to make sure his job is a little bit easier. I think people it's almost like you take him for granted. It's like you got Aiden Hutchinson, who's so damn great that we're not even worried about the other side of Hutch. It's like, all right, let's focus on it. Paschal hasn't worked. Levi hasn't worked. James Houston didn't work. Davenport was hurt. Oh, yeah, you signed him last year. He was never the answer. So going into this offseason, man, that's the number one. There's like, if you want to do a checklist, there's one space, shout out to Sam Flannel, space bar, everything else. But number one is get this man either a proven player or go get him a damn good rookie, not a project. Please, we're over that. So that's what I'm calling out. Brad Holmes today got me a lot of heat, But that was the reason I'm doing it, is because this isn't just this past season with injuries. This has been through his tenure. He's failed to build a great defensive line. And the injuries, I get you didn't get to see Aiden for a whole season with Liam and DJ, but who was starting on the other end anyway? Davenport was hurt. So you would have Pascal out there. Like, all due respect to him, that ain't the answer. So that wouldn't even have been a great defensive line. You would have had a defensive player of the year in Aiden. What else? Like, good players. You need great players. So that was the point I was making. If you're going to win a Super Bowl, guys, that's the ultimate goal. You play to fucking win the game. Go get either A, proven guys on the defensive line, or B, go get this man help. That's the overall message for me, the Lions fans, and hopefully Brad sees it. Not that he gives a damn, but it would be nice. But that was the message I was trying to send out today, and people, people came at me for whatever reason. That's fine. I like it. I like a little pushback, but that was the point I was trying to
sure.
make. That was the point.
All right, hey, very well said, Jeff. Hey, is it my turn now?
You may have the floor, Boone.
Do I have the floor? Do I have permission from Jeff?
Turn the mic down a little bit, though, Boone. Then you have the floor.
Mic down. What about now? Is it a little better?
Perfect. There you go.
Is it my turn? Gun guy in the chat said, take your pants off. That's a great tradition. That man comes in and says that. It's my turn. I have the floor, Jeff.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say this pretty straightforward, Jeff. The tweet, I texted you as soon as I saw it. To the people in the chat, the people online on Twitter who are criticizing Jeff Iafrate for what he says, you all are the losers in this situation. All of you. Everyone that's going at Jeff, everyone that thinks Brad doesn't have anything to blame or he's not one of the losers coming out of the Super Bowl, not Brad Holmes is a loser. That's what people I don't think understand, Jeff, and this is where wording and all that goes about it. I get it, where people see that and go, Brad's not a loser. No, but if you read the tweet and you understand the situation at hand, it's not like, and I told you this, Jeff, like, it's not even just Brad. The Detroit Lions organization, the players, Dan Campbell, the coaching staff, all of us that are talking on this show, the fans, we're all losers. We all are. And it's because you are the Super Bowl favorites. You are the Super Bowl favorites this year. Even and if you want to use the excuse, oh, injuries. I have people in my comment section, oh, well, Booner, this guy was injured. This guy was injured. This guy. No. After all the injuries, you were the Super Bowl favorites in the sports books. The Detroit Lions were favored to win the Super Bowl going into the playoffs. And you didn't have the pass rush to stop Jaden Daniels. And then not even a month later, you see the Philadelphia Eagles, who was in your conference, that you were favored over to win the Super Bowl, go beat the Kansas City Chiefs because of their pass rush, something that you haven't been able to figure out over the last 4 years that Brad Holmes has drafted, that he has brought free agents in, that he has made moves. He has not figured it out. Brad has done a great job building up a franchise, a great job building a team up. He deserves all the credit for putting the Detroit Lions in a position to be contenders and have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. But listen, everyone's not perfect. You could be the best in the sports media world, Stephen A. Smith. You could be anyone, the best in your profession. You have some sort of downside. Brad Holmes' downside, outside of Aiden Hutchinson and Ali McNeil, has been bringing in people on the defensive line. He hasn't been able to do it. He hasn't. So to Jeff's point, Jeff's 100% correct. The people who say, Jeff, you're wrong, injuries, this, that. No, he is 100% correct. There are those people out on Twitter, and this is the funny part to me, that are in our industry, the people who want to say, make up all these excuses. Well, this team's drafted well. This team's done this. You don't need to go out and be realistic with yourself for once. Like, be realistic. Criticize your team one time. You're in a Super Bowl window, and I believe as well, and Jeff, I've said this to you 100 times, I believe that this window can be longer than normal windows. You could see this be like a 49ers where they're consistently competing. You can. But you can also make moves and bring guys in. And you can also draft better at the defensive line position, something Brad has not done. So watching that game last night, boys, like, all I'm thinking about, and Jeff, I'm watching it with you, all I could think about when I walk away from the camera is like, they dominated Patrick Mahomes. dominated Patrick Mahomes. We got in the argument a little bit. It was like a back and forth about the Chiefs' offensive line, how great they were. Jeff, how great was that offensive line? They weren't good. Why? Because they had a great defensive line. They won in the trenches. As much as Brad Holmes prioritizes offensive line in the trenches, he should do the same on the other side. And just because you have Aiden Hutchinson doesn't mean you can't go out and add another defensive lineman, because that was the reason this Philadelphia Eagles team is so great and why they have a Lombardi trophy today and the Detroit Lions organization does not. Everything about this whole situation, this was the season, boys, where the Detroit Lions were the favorite to win the Super Bowl. And instead of that, the other team in the NFC that you are trying to be like, that you've been trying to replicate, or whatever the word is, they're the ones that won it. You should be like, they should be embarrassed. They should be mad. You see the Lions players out there tweeting like, this should be us. This should, like, stop tweeting it, be about it, and you should be playing in this game next year. And Brad, I hope you took notes last night, and I hope you go out there in the draft and you prioritize that. And if you don't, I hope in the next few months you have another edge rusher on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson by the names of Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, or you go out and you better hit on a first-round defensive lineman. And if you don't, you're the loser again at that point. Like, you keep missing on edge on pass rushers. Like, that's why I don't think, like, Jeff, I don't think people read your tweet correctly and understood, because a lot of the people that I saw are like, I agree with the meats and the potatoes of the tweet. I just don't like you call Brad a loser. And what did I do to you, Jeff? I texted you instantly and said, what are you doing with this? Why are you calling him a loser? And then when you look at it, you're like, no, like, you're not wrong. We all are, like, it's not even just Brad. It's like, yeah, Brad might be the biggest one, because the pass rush was the formula of winning the Super Bowl, and he hasn't been able to hit on it. And Lions organization as a whole, like, 17-point lead last year, you blow it. You have the 1 seed, you're 15-2 this year. Injuries aside, you blow it. Like, that's no one else's fault but theirs. But people are gonna stick up for them on Twitter, on X. We're at the point where you're year 3 now, going into a Super Bowl contending team. And what happens next year when you fall short? Are all of those people on X and on Twitter and in the chat right now, if you're sitting there trying to stick up for it, all of those people next year, if you lose and you don't make it to the Super Bowl, what are their excuses then? What happens if injuries happen again next year? Are you just going to keep going year after year after year after year after year? Well, injuries. No, it's the NFL. Find depth, find a way to win.
Yes.
That's all it is. And there's no excuses. And if you want to say, well, guys got injured, no, because in a couple minutes when we do our Brad Holmes segment at 8:30 or whatever it is, I have notes here that show how bad Brad Holmes has been compared to the Eagles GM, the Chiefs GM on drafting defensive linemen. The proof is in the pudding.
Yes.
If there is one thing that Brad Holmes has not been good at and can be criticized for, it's the defensive line, because the best defensive lineman he drafted was the number 2 overall pick.
And I want to just, sorry, Klotz, I just want to say this, but I want, because what Boone was saying, like, it's not about, because I see a comment here, I want to make sure I address it. Because again, like, I'm cool with pushback. We can have a discussion. That's fine. You don't have to unfollow me, like people are doing that I actually respected, but it's fine. Ryan says, what pass rusher has he missed on? Pascal was never that guy to begin with. He's a big end run stuffer. Like,
why'd you draft him?
Well, I saw earlier someone else said, like, you're acting like he hasn't tried. It's not about trying. And someone said that to me today on Twitter. It's like, well, he's trying. Guys, I understand there's proof. I just went through and we're going to talk about it today. Guys, he's drafted. He has drafted. But my point is, how many have been hits? Not many, which is the problem. Like, he's missed on Levi. If you don't think Levi's a miss, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you're a second-round pick, dude. That's Brian Branch's round. That's Sam Laporta's round. Oh, yeah, who else? Josh Pascal. He was in the same round. He was in the second round. So those guys are misses. Broderick, a miss. Like, that's 3. That's my point here. And then you got one defensive lineman in the Broderick draft. You just got Broderick Martin, which is bad. It's not good. And this has been a consistent issue. Like, you have a historic offense, guys. This offense is historically great. And in my mind, looking back over the last couple of years, I'm thinking, wow. And this isn't even about the injuries, by the way. I'm talking the last couple of years. I'm thinking, man, you look at that 49ers game, 17-point lead. You want to bring up Dan Campbell's decisions? Go ahead. Me? Defense. That was the issue. That was a 12-5 season. The offense was great. Your defensive line, that was an issue. We knew it was all year, and it bit you in the ass in the biggest game. So didn't learn anything new there. You go in that offseason, what happened? Well, you signed DJ Reader. That's fine. How do you address the other side of Hutch, though? Oh, yeah, Marcus Davenport. That's my problem. That's my problem. Is like at that point, you got to say, well, we need someone who can really solidify that other spot here. And you didn't do it again. And they traded. Shout out to Spenny and Easy, man. I love those guys. And they talked about it today. It had some great points. My thing, though, with the Za'Darius, because I heard people on Twitter, I saw some people on Twitter saying, well, he traded for Za'Darius Smith. Guys, he traded for Za'Darius because everyone was dead on your defensive line. Like, that's not because he wanted to pair him with Aiden. He was done. He had no choice but to get Za'Darius Smith. You forced his hand to. And even, it's like, is Za'Darius Smith the long-term answer? No. But let's not act like he traded for Za'Darius to pair with Aiden. Like, that was basically, hey, we just need help here. We just need help this year. Hopefully, maybe, we'll see, he'll probably be around this year. But he's not the answer either. So that's where I'm coming from with this whole thing is, has he tried? Yes. But has he failed on most of it? Yes, he has. And he's, again, people are misunderstanding the overall point. Guy's a top 5 GM. He turned around the Lions. I'm not taking any of that away from him. But that's just the facts. Like, building a defensive line, I guess specifically the other side of Hutch, has been a failure. I mean, we're going into year 5 and we're still saying draft an edge. So that's
can we just address this thing too? Like this, like constant, and this is the stuff they got on Twitter, and like this is pathetic. It's a spoiled children complaining about things that didn't come out their way. Like, that's not, and Xavier D, and you tune in all the time, so appreciate you. But this is the exact problem that I have with some Lions fans and some people who not even just Lions fans, but people who might cover the team, like all this. It's like, what do we like? It's like, you can't criticize. You can't say, hey, this is where things went wrong. Yeah. This is what you need to do better. Like, that should be a thing. Like, bro, there's people out there who who think it's impossible to criticize ever, will unfollow you, who will do this and do that because it's like, I'm not getting my way. Like, this guy's criticizing my favorite GM. Like, guys, like, it happens. Look at the Eagles, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni. Eagles fans were wanting Nick Sirianni out in week 4 after they were 2-2. Was it for a good reason? Probably wasn't the best, but guess what? He figured it out. There was something that he was doing wrong. Last year, guess what? He hires 2 bad coordinators. Guess what he did? He turned around after everyone said it's win or go home for Nick Sirianni the next year. He hired 2 new coordinators. Xavier D, if you were an Eagles fan last year and everyone was saying we need 2 new coordinators, are you going to sit there and be like, look at these spoiled children complaining about things that didn't come out their way because the Eagles lost because they didn't have the right coordinators? No, you wouldn't. You would say, no, this is a problem and needs to get fixed. I would love to see Xavier D. I would love to see some of these people who complain about criticism, like their actual lives, when there's criticism, like how they take that. Because it's probably not great. Probably not. When it's like, hey, we need to do this better. Like, we have conversations about our show off the air all the time. And it's like, hey, we have to have these conversations to make the show run better, to do this. Does it suck sometimes? Yeah, we do it. Does it suck sometimes? You have to criticize Brad Holmes because we love him. We think he's the best GM. He's the best GM in Lions history. We all know that. Does that still mean he can't ever make a mistake? No. This is just where it is. And if people want to win a Super Bowl, you can't just keep sitting back and be like, hey, you get a participation medal. Hey, participation trophies all around the city of Detroit for Lions fans. We participated and went 15-2. Jeff, how fun was that? 15-2. How sick is that, dude?
Dude,
what do you have to show for it? Do you have a trophy? Klotz, do you have a trophy? Show me your Lombardi trophy.
I don't,
Let me see it.
Jalen Hurts
participation trophies are amazing. All of you on Twitter, you guys know who cover the team. You love participation trophy. Here you go. You get one. You get one. You get one. Quit complaining and find a way to fix it. And let's have real conversations about how to actually win a Lombardi trophy instead of being quiet, sitting back and saying, I love Brad Holmes, man. This is the best thing ever. Sorry, Klotz, you can go. I'm so tired.
Yeah, I want to hear
what tired of this.
What did you make of this week? What
I think is ironic to the whole situation where people are saying, well, this injury, like the defense was full of injuries. It's like, okay, so what happens when injuries go awry? You have the next man up, and then you look back. Let's think about the true edges, the true guys that Brad Holmes has acquired via free agency or the draft. It's been like strictly edge guys, not tweeners, not guys that are defensive tackles that can get to the quarterback. No, like actual edge guys. So let's start off. Aiden Hutchinson, A+. Marcus Davenport, just going to give that an F. Dude played 2 games. As far as a signing, $6 million, you didn't get your money's worth. Okay, Zadarius Smith, B. Give it a B. Like, it was solid, didn't do too bad. Let's think of another one. Okay. To your point earlier, shout out Sam Flannel, spacebar, Al-Qadim Muhammad, James Houston, those type of guys. The simple fact of the matter is, whereas I don't even think he's missed on edges, he hasn't even addressed the edge position truly outside of Aiden Hutchinson. So when these injuries do happen, there is nobody there. The Philadelphia Eagles are 6-7 deep on the defensive line. They're going to lose Milton Williams and probably either Zach Bond or Josh Sweat, and they don't care. They're like, okay, we'll draft guys that can be depth, but they can contribute right now. When you look at Jeff Booner, they already laid it out. The positions where you could have depth on this defensive line and truly make an impact when Aiden Hutchinson does go down, it's filled with projects. And maybe those projects will turn out down the road, but they're not making a difference for you right now. And the Super Bowl window is right now. So Brad Holmes is an excellent GM, but I just think it's not even addressing the edge position. It's not even like he's missed. Outside of Marcus Davenport, I wouldn't even say that he's missed. He's been okay, but he's acquired legitimately 3 guys that have played for you. Al-Qadim Muhammad is great to bring on, but you need a guy who's going to make a difference, because Howie Roseman, he doesn't care that those guys are leaving, because you know what he's probably doing? He might not be doing it today because he just won the Super Bowl yesterday, but he's probably going to be calling up Andrew Berry here in a little bit and figuring out how to get Myles Garrett in Philadelphia. You know why? Because they can afford him, and they're trying to get better on the defensive line. There's a gap between Detroit and Philadelphia's defensive line, even if Aiden Hutchinson is healthy. Now, the gap might not be as far apart, but you have to get better than Philadelphia in any way, shape, or form. They could still have an advantage, but you have to close that gap, because on the other side of you, Jalen Hurts, he ran for 72 yards in the Super Bowl. Jared Goff isn't going to do that for you. So you have to find a way to get to Jalen Hurts, because if you get to Jared Goff and you're letting Jalen Hurts sitting back there just protected, he's going to pick you apart. And you saw it last night against arguably the best defensive coordinator ever in Steve Spagnuolo. So Brad Holmes has to go full in on the edge position. Booner, edge to the D. It has to happen. You can't just go, okay, let me go get another Marcus Davenport, a guy that can start this year. You have to go get 3 or 4 guys on the edge position, because even if you don't sign them, you need to get the best 2 or 3 guys out of those 4. And I think you have enough tweeners. Like, we've seen it enough. Like, you can get as many defensive tackles as you want. It's not 2000 anymore. It's not 1980. Quarterbacks run. 75% of the league has mobile quarterbacks. And I think you have to adapt to that by getting true edge rushers. That's what Brad Holmes has to do. He hasn't done it yet, truly, outside of Aiden.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to say this too. And hey, shout out to Booner Path. Shout out Coach Walk. You said I'm curious. So now is the Booner Path. It was Booner off the Booner Path. You guys are making a big deal about this because the Eagles won. You sound like children. I'll say this, and if you have watched me for the last 2 or 3 years since I started doing this, and then last year when the Booner Path became a thing to go win a Super Bowl, part of the Booner Path is having conversations, real conversations. What needs to be fixed? Klotz as a CPO, like, there's construction on the Booner Path. There's detours, like figuring out, hey, what does this Lions team, what does Brad, what does Dan, what do these players, what do they need to change? What do they need to do better to get, to get better? And it's that's these conversations. And it's not, and I think I'll speak for the guys, like, it's not a big deal because the Eagles won. I think it's how the Eagles won. Like, you got to see it. And I think it's just knowing that this year, again, the injuries, you could make that excuse, but after the injuries, again, like, the Lions were favored to win the Super Bowl. They had the best odds to win the Super Bowl. Like, everyone in the country looked at the Lions as the favorite to go host the Lombardi Trophy this season after all the injuries happened, after the Vikings game going into the playoffs. And when you're the favorite, and a team in your conference that wins the NFC is the one that beats the Chiefs, and it shows like that could have been you. You want to look back. It's not that we sound like children. It's like, hey, let's break down. Like, where did this go wrong? Injuries, yes. Outside of that, like, what happened? You didn't have a D line. Like, Hutchins, like, you can't just rely on just Aiden Hutchinson. Like, the Eagles lose Brandon Graham. Guess what? They have other guys that keep stepping up. Like, you can't just sit there and rely on one guy. And Brad he has had 7 draft picks for the D line. 2 of them have hit. 2 for 7. And when we get into the draft and Brad and all that, like I went and looked at the Super Bowl winning the Chiefs, what their D-line looked like in 23, what the Eagles looked like in 24. Hey, where did those guys come from? They're top sack performers. And it's like, Brad's just missed. And I'm like, I don't think this is like a big deal because the Eagles just won. I think these conversations had to have been, we've had these conversations about the D-line outside of the Super Bowl and the Eagles winning it. It just amplifies even more the fact that that's how the Eagles beat the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes by 30 plus points.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm shocked by how much, like, I don't think, like, in my opinion, this conversation is about adding talent on the other side of Hutch. Like, everyone should be on board with that. We're not looking at, like, and this is where people are like, well, the injuries. Guys, like, I will say, you know what? You are right. The injuries were terrible this year. That's not the entire discussion. The discussion is through Brad's tenure. Like, we're getting so wrapped up in defending the injuries. Guys, like, look at it from a 4,000-foot view. It's not just about the injuries. Like, I was preaching that these injuries were going to catch up to them, and they did on defense because defense wins championships. You heard it from Jalen Hurts himself. He said it after the Super Bowl. Defense wins championships. And this year, they had no one on defense because of injuries. I'm not arguing that. I'm talking about the last 3 years prior to that. Or I guess 1 year because they were a good team the year prior. All the other 2 years they were kind of, but you get the point. The year prior. Like, this isn't just a this year thing, guys. No, this has been a thing. I mean, Brad, throughout, like Booner said, throughout his tenure, if you were going to point out a weakness, it's hitting on defensive linemen. Besides Hutch, who was the number 2 overall pick, and I'll still give him credit for hitting on that. I know I always go back and forth with people. I give GMs credit for not messing it up. He got Aiden. He got Aleem. But, like, other than that, let's be real. It's all misses. It's all misses. It's all role players or misses. So can we at least be objective and all collectively agree, yeah, you know what, Jeff, that's fair. Going forward, not only does he have to continue to put resources into it, but he has to get it right. The secondary was bad last year. He put resources into it with the draft, but he didn't get it right. Like, I'm sorry. At this point, Ennis Rakestraw, I don't know what he's going to be. I have no clue. All I know, he was never available his rookie year after suffering injuries in college. Like, that's a fact. Cooper DeJean was a second-round pick, came in and was productive. I know he was selected ahead of Ennis, but that's just the facts. Same with Terron. Like, are we guaranteed Terron's going to be an all-pro corner? No, we're not. So that's the thing. It's not just about putting resources into something. It's about getting it right. And for the defensive line, as a guy who's a very good talent evaluator, that is something that has been his weakness. And if you disagree with that, I don't know what to tell you. The proof is in the data. He has not hit on anyone but Aiden.
Jeff, can we do it? I got this. Is a perfect time. This is a perfect time to do my exercise with the notes that I brought up. You bringing that up, Klotz, Jeff? You want to do this real quick?
Go ahead. I want to hear it. Yeah, let me go.
And what you're saying there, this is T-roll Bigums. He didn't fix it. Everything in 1 year equals loser. Got it. Okay. Let's just go back to Brad's drafts. Do you guys want to do that with D lines? And you want to do this? Are you guys ready? All right, let's do a quick. And this is for the people out there who think, hey, Brad's been just fine. He's tried to do it. Like, okay, let's take a look at this, because there are people, right, who want to make the argument that, hey, the Eagles drafted their D line, which, yes, they've drafted very good D linemen, right? Part of this, when you say, hey, they did it, part of it is Howie Roseman hasn't missed.
Right.
He knows how to draft D linemen. So I laugh, like, on Twitter. I laugh when I see the tweets of people quote tweeting you, Jeff, or quote tweeting stuff about Brad Holmes in the draft and going in for said Hassan Reddick, but going all in for a guy like Myles Garrett, because it's like, hey, like, yeah, you want to bring up all these other examples of all these other great teams that have drafted D linemen and they've hit on all of them. All right, let's act like Brad Holmes didn't draft. He did. He's missed. So let's do this. Let's do this. Can we go back to 3-screen here? I want to walk through this segment and this little this thing with us. All right, boys. So I broke it down three parts. I took the Detroit Lions defensive line draft pick since Brad Holmes been in tenure, right? And then I went and looked at the 2023 Kansas City Chiefs roster, defensive linemen, and I took like their top couple performers. I only took the guys that they drafted, so it's fair. So we don't have to talk about free agent. I just wanted to show like, hey, they've drafted these guys. And then I also got the Philadelphia Eagles. They're in this year's Super Bowl winning defensive line. I went and got the guys that they drafted, and I compared. I was like, I'm interested. What I'm interested in is these people, all the people's comments on this. It's like acting like Brad has done no wrong. But these D lines, guys, like they've drafted guys in the 4th round, the 5th round, the 3rd round who helped them. And it's like, okay, let's have this conversation. So I took it first part, 1st round picks, right? Or let's go 1 to 15. Let's just go top 15. Detroit Lions, Brad Holmes, number 2 overall, Aiden Hutchinson. Great, correct? We can agree on that. But the people who want to draft, you don't want to give up a 1st round draft pick, number 28 overall, for a Myles Garrett. Outside of top 15, like these guys drafted Jalen Carter at 9, Jordan Davis at 13, Brandon Graham at 13. You're not getting those guys outside of top 15, correct?
Yeah.
So there's that first segment, right? He did his job with Hutch, and those guys did their jobs because they had 3 top 15 picks in that time span, correct? Now let's look at picks 30 to like the 2nd round. Brad Holmes, number 41 overall. Levi O. Josh Pascal, and at number 72, Aleem McNeil, which I think we can all agree.
Yeah,
that he's 1 for 2, right? Okay, now let's go look at the teams that won the Super Bowl the last 2 years. They had 3 picks in that span as well. Let me tell you guys what. Both of those teams, guess what they did? They're 3 for 3. Nolan Smith, George Karlaftis, and Chris Jones. Put those 3 guys up against Levi O, Josh Pascal, and Lee McNeil. Okay. That right there, you should already look at it and be like, oh, well, yeah, Brad really missed. And I know they weren't the same draft. I'm just saying, in that span, Howie Roseman and whatever his name is in Kansas City, they found those guys in those rounds where Brad was supposed to find some dudes. Brad said, no, you know what? Let me go get some injured guys like Levi O and Josh Pascal. We'll run with them. Okay, now you would think, okay, no, there's no way Brad has missed again. Like, he's already missed a couple. Oh, no, let's go after the 2nd round. 96 overall, Broderick Martin. Injured all year. 189 overall, Mekhi Wingo. There's still opportunity with that. But still, an injury-prone player that you knew, and then guess what happened this year? Gets injured. Number 189 overall. Oh, number 217, the 1-year wonder, James Houston. Oh, so he's 0 for 3 in those so far, right? We would say like none of those guys helped out this year at all, right?
Yeah.
Oh, let's go over to after the 2nd round for Kansas City and Philly. Number 73 overall, Milton Williams, who you saw how good he was last night in that game. Number 130 overall, Josh Sweat. Number 177 overall, Mike Dana from the Kansas City Chiefs. 3 for 3 again. You go through all those draft picks, those guys are 9 for 9 combined. 9 for 9 combined. And Ryan Ant wants to put in the chat, Houston got hurt. That's the point, Ryan. You draft guys that get hurt. None of them. I don't care if you get hurt or whatever happens. Brad Holmes is 2 for 7 so far drafting defensive linemen. And then if you want to go to the last 2 Super Bowl winners and use that draft picks for me and say, oh, well, what about their drafts? They're 9 for 9 for their top sack guys. Why can't Brad Holmes do that? We're not even asking go to 9 for 9. Give us 4 guys. 4 for 7. 4 for 7. And people are like, well, you can't get them in the 1st round. You can't do it. Why can those guys get guys in the 30s and the 70s, the 100s, 2nd-day picks? But Brad Holmes can't. I would have rather draft, like, there's just so many other, like, Hendon Hookers, these guys. It's like, those aren't priorities to me. There's wasted picks in there. And then you look back, yes, in hindsight, you look back and you're like, you're missing out on guys. And then you get to this moment and you're like, we don't have these players. And that's my point. It's like these championship Super Bowl winners, you can pull up the top sack leaders on their runs in the defensive line room. And these guys, these GMs hit on those defensive linemen. Hit. That's the difference between winning a Super Bowl and not. Is you don't have to go out there in free agency and bring in an injured Marcus Davenport that hasn't played for 2 years. A Broderick Martin who is from Western Kentucky or whatever it is, and you have to hope that he can develop into a good player. They go out and get dudes. They don't develop. They get dudes, and then they develop. And that's the point, I think, this whole night. And people are James Houston's yard. Like, guys, I'm naming literally, these are the picks that didn't work out. Brad Holmes is 2 for 7 in defensive linemen. These Super Bowl winners the last 2 years in their drafts, 9 for 9. They're leading the sack leaders on these Super Bowl winning teams. But it's ridiculous.
If people are upset with James Houston is injured, just say, how about this? He's a miss. If you disagree with that,
he had the 1 year and he's a miss. That's the point of this list is a miss, injured or not.
If you want to go like back and forth over the injury thing, we can all agree miss. Like it was a miss. Obviously, he's not a part of the team. What are you going to say? It was a hit. He isn't playing for you. He was cut. So to your point, Boone, like that again, like people, and this is my problem, Klotzy, like, and we've experienced this, dude. It's like, do we think Brad Holmes is great? Yes, but the fact that we have to keep saying it so people understand that we don't hate this man is ridiculous to me. It's called criticism. When you're great at something, you're going to get criticized. All right, that's just how it works. And Brad Holmes is one of the best at what he does. But he is not he's not perfect. Okay, can we at least agree? Maybe there's people out there that really do think that. And I would say put the joint down and let's have a discussion because he's not. There's things he does wrong, and that's okay. Do I want him fired? No. No. The fact that I even have to say that is ridiculous. No, I don't want him fired. Can we not critique a GM? Like, that is especially today, like, of course we're going to have this discussion because the Super Bowl was yesterday, and today we're going to talk about what the Lions need to do to get there. It's a relevant conversation. Yes, it all relates back to what we saw yesterday. So, like, that's the thing that I can't wrap my head around is how dare you? Oh, you're just not grateful for what he's done for the Lions. No, I've actually addressed that. He's a top 5 GM. The team's turned around. Like, we all got that shit all the way. But it's a fact that defensive linemen, for the most part, it just hasn't worked out in the draft form. And it doesn't have to be all the draft. It could be free agency. Oh, yeah, that hasn't worked out either with Davenport or trades. So I don't know, Klotzy. It feels like we can't have any discussions anymore. That's what it feels like.
I feel like Brad Holmes has got to be like a political icon in Detroit where it's just been like news propaganda. Like there's just been an unimaginable amount of propaganda where people are just brainwashed and thinking that he's not a human being at this point. He's just a calculator. It's just a matter of time till everything works out. Brad has always got that trick up his sleeve where right when you think it's going to fail, it works. And it's like, a lot of times it does. But there's been times that it hasn't been. And I think Howie Roseman has been the GM for the Eagles for 2 decades plus. He's been to 3 Super Bowls in the last 10 years. And they were talking about it on the Super Bowl last night where, like, they drafted Jalen Reagor in front of Justin Jefferson, and they looked at their draft philosophy and, like, we have to stop doing this. They got Devontae Smith the next year because they needed a wide receiver. But then they just talked about, like, their whole philosophy. Howie Roseman had already won a Super Bowl. After he won a Super Bowl, he changed his draft philosophy. That's the whole point of all of this is saying Brad's been great, but it's now time for Brad to switch up his game. Keep doing what you're doing, but you have to add another element because clearly there's an element on the Eagles roster that is lacking in the Detroit Lions. So it's hard to believe that people just can't be like, okay, this guy's really fucking good, but he's not perfect. So I'm agreeing with you boys. It's just propaganda at this point. I feel like we're looking like wizard hats. We're looking like the guys that are like going on the dark web, or we're talking about the things that are illegal within the public presence. Like, no, it's like this is a fucking sports team. Okay, let's stop acting like it's God that we're talking about in Brad Holmes. I'm like, no, this is football. People make mistakes in football, but at the end of the day, it's a business. So let's take a deep breath. Everything will be A-okay with the Detroit Lions. We're not saying that they're going to go out there and be 8-9 next year because they don't have a defense. That's not what we're saying whatsoever. Brad Holmes is probably going to have a good draft. Hopefully he doesn't have the first 2 picks because he used on Myles Garrett. But if he does, I trust that Brad Holmes will trade up and get the player that he wants. Now, the question is, will it be a defensive end? That's what all we're saying. Because in the past, traded back for a running back, and you're sitting at 18. There's a couple good edge rushers there, a couple good guys that get to the quarterback even on the inside, and you go with a off-ball linebacker. So that's an opportunity where you could have addressed the edge position. So all we're saying is there's been plenty of opportunity for Brad to address the edge position. And when he's done it outside of Aiden Hutchinson, hasn't been the best, and it hasn't been to the volume that you've seen these winning teams go after that. So I just think it's common sense at this point, boys. It's like, okay, Brad, you've been good. Was it 4 years now with Brad? went to the worst franchise to now it's going to be a household name franchise. When you think of the NFL, you're going to start thinking of the Detroit Lions over the next couple of years. How do you keep that? You don't just keep your foot in the second gear. No, you got to get to third, fourth, fifth gear. And that's all that Brad Holmes has to learn how to do. So.
Yeah, and he's had the philosophy when he got here. What did we? I remember talking about it on air. It's like, oh, his belief is built through the trenches. It's just, it feels like the last year just kind of got away from that.
The D line he really has an outside of Hutch.
No.
Him and Hutch and Aleem, and then obviously they just signed DJ Reader, but an older DJ Reader. But to me, it's like I think he's made a lot of good picks, but there is that side to where you, in hindsight, you do look back, and we praised him for so long. And just hindsight, you look back and you're like, yeah, you wish you probably drafted some more D linemen, and didn't he missed on some. And it's like Brad was never going to be perfect in the draft. Like he never was.
No.
But the misses that he's had has been on the D line. And when you look in the NFL, like I think the whole chat and everyone that watches football can agree that, like, again, it's like offensively, our D, like Lions fans should know it the biggest. Like you went through the trenches and your offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. And that's why you dominate so many defenses. So it's like, if you're on the other side of the ball, Lions, like they should know in the front office, hey, like if you're going up against a great offensive line, you have to have a D line. Like if you guys don't believe me, go watch Amon-Ra St. Brown's podcast last week. He said it himself. When you have a D line, a great D line, it helps your core. It doesn't matter what corners you have out there, because that D line is going to just create havoc all game long. And you firsthand saw it last night. And like that's the point of this whole thing. And I said this earlier today, Jeff, when I was talking to you, like, to me, it's like, and my first thought was like, I don't think Brad, like, yeah, last night watching the game, we all might have been the losers of it because we saw we didn't have the D line, and that's what hurt us with Jaden Daniels. But if you go through this offseason, like Brad can still go do this and get this done. Like you just had to, I think the point of all of this, and I'll speak for you guys, like you have to just go get D line this offseason. Like that's just number one priority. It's not a bad thing. It's like, hey, Brad, you've been one of the best GMs drafting and building a team the last 4 years. Top 3. No question about it. Okay, what's the negative? Everyone's not perfect. Howie Roseman's messed up. The Chiefs haven't had the best drafts the last few years. Brad hasn't been able to draft D linemen outside of Hutch and Aleem. 2 for 7. So it's like, okay, this offseason, that's the priority. There should be no developmental defensive lineman like Mekhi Wingo or like Broderick Martin. There should be none of that. It should be strictly go get guys that can give you sacks next season. You need production. Yeah, you need it. And if that's bringing a Myles Garrett in, if that's getting a Max Crosby, if that's giving up picks, if that's at 28 overall, going to get James Pierce out of Tennessee. But Brad, I'll tell you what, like you can't miss, because this miss is more important than all of the rebuild, because this miss on the D-line this year could cost you a Super Bowl again next season. But that's what it comes down to. You need to win a Super Bowl.
Yes,
and if you miss it, you're going to lose again next year. That's why it's so passionate. And I think Jeff's tweet today and everyone about it, it's like the Super Bowl is on the line now. This isn't going from 5 wins to 13 wins. This is going from 15 wins to the Lombardi. You have to hit. You have to make the move. And if you don't, there's more on the line in year 5 than there was in year 1. And I think that's where the criticism comes. And a lot of Lions fans don't want to admit it, but the criticism builds when you become good.
Yes.
And you need to understand that. And you need to know this offseason D-line is the biggest offseason Brad's had in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
the biggest. And I think he'll get it done.
Yes.
I know he knows that, and I think he gets it done. Bottom line.
Yeah, because again, and this is the thing. People keep bringing up the injuries. Guys, like, enough of the fucking injuries. I get it. We all agree the injuries are unfortunate. Think big picture here. The last couple of years, like, get the injury. Like, no one's debating the injuries. The injuries were unfortunate. It sucks. I even came on air and said the defense was screwed. They're not winning a Super Bowl with that defense. We saw it. So let's get past the injuries. 4,000-foot view. Okay, let's get over the injuries. You're yelling at a brick wall doing that. Let's get over the injuries. We're talking about the last couple of years. Why did the Rams revamp their entire defensive line in 2 drafts? In the draft they actually did it. They drafted Kobe Turner and Byron Young in the 3rd round. Both of them hits immediately. They're great. That was in 2023. Next year, Braden Fisk in the 2nd round. He's great. Like, this is a fair thing to ask of Brad. Is like, hey man, out of all these draft picks and defensive linemen, damn, it would have been nice to hit him more than you missed. That's all we're saying. And if people disagree with that, I don't know what to tell you. Like, again, get the injuries out of the way. We see it happen. The Rams, 2 drafts. They draft 3 guys past the first round that are studs. And we just have to sit here and say, well, Brad, you gave me the best season, the 2 best seasons the last 2 years that I've ever seen. I'll just shut my mouth. No, it's not how that works. You can at least call something out if you see it. And I think that's important. I think people, if you see something and you disagree with it or you think a certain way, say it. Like, and we can have a discussion. People are like, how dare you? Brad Holmes is the greatest. He is an excellent GM. But
can I ask you guys a question?
That's where he's fell short, is just hitting on more defensive linemen. He's missed on the guys he's drafted, unfortunately. But
I want to ask you guys a question, and I want to ask the chat this too. And this kind of is kind of the point. Like, even if the guys aren't injured, right? Let's say Hutch doesn't get injured, but all right, one of the mistakes, again, we're talking about not just the draft, but free agency, signing Marcus Davenport. I give credit to Klotz, because Klotz said I didn't like the signing because of the injury pass. Guess what? He plays 2 or 3 games. If Marcus Davenport gets injured and Hutch doesn't, we can all agree Lions fans are banging the table for another edge rusher at the deadline still, correct?
Yeah. No.
Points done then. If you're it's over. And that's what it is. That's all this is. Because if there were no injuries going into next year, who's your other edge rusher? Do the chat, do you guys really like sit back and be honest? Are you sitting there and going, I'll be fine going into next year?
No, we would be
Josh Pascal, with Levi O. I'm good with those guys at the edge, with Quadim Mohammed. You're all, if you say yes, you're lying. That's this point, is getting another edge on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson and letting those guys who were starting and who weren't good because of injuries, let them be the depth. But you have to go get another edge rusher, and you got to get someone who is legit. And whoever this guy is, I don't know who it is. I'm not even okay with Pascal. He could be a fifth man, sixth man.
Because the thing is with that,
you're not going to sit there and bang the table for Pascal to be your starting edge rusher.
All these guys like Pascal and Wingo, like they're good players. We're not saying that they're not, but you know what? They're not. What their strength is not getting to the quarterback. They're good against the run. It's like the Lions have done enough of stop the run, stop the run, stop the run. I'm not saying go draft Chop Robinson. I'm not saying go draft a guy that cannot get after the run game, who's a liability on the edge. But okay, the edge is going to be set. You have Aiden Hutchinson. I understand injuries aren't there. Talking next season. Aiden Hutchinson will be there. Edge will be set. If you re-sign Zadarius Smith, edge will be set. Who is getting to the quarterback other than Aiden Hutchinson? And that's all that's being explained, because if Aiden Hutchinson goes down, you wish that there was a backup plan. Plan B was Marcus Davenport. He got hurt in week 2. Plan C was Josh Pascal. He has a career total sacks of, I don't know, probably like 12, if that. Next option is Al-Quadim Muhammad, who is sitting on the couch. Next option is Pat O'Connor, Ezekiel Turner, and outside Trevor Nowaski. Like, if the Lions were to somehow beat the Washington Commanders, which I think that's enough in itself, saying that they weren't able to beat the Washington Commanders at home after 15 wins, they were not going to be able to get to Jalen Hurts, and then you would have seen a glaring difference. The Lions would have had no chance in the Super Bowl, even if they got there against Patrick Mahomes, because of the point that Jeff was saying, even to start it off, the Eagles were sending 4. The Lions, when they were winning, were leading the NFL in blitzes out pretty much. Like, they were 1 or 2, whichever week you want to count it. The Lions were up in they were sending Brian Branch. They were sending Alex Anzalone. They were sending Jack Campbell. They were sending more than they had to. Injuries have something to do with that, but wouldn't that be great if you had a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick that could actually play for you this year? That was a 2nd round guy from last year that can develop and actually play. The Nolan Smith of the Detroit Lions, you don't have that. You have the Broderick Martins, who's pulling a quad in the offseason, and in the regular season, he's standing on the sideline in civilian clothing. I'm tired of seeing, again, love the pick, but I'm done with it. Like Sione Vaki. What is Sione Vaki doing right now? Like, he's a good special teamer, but in the 3rd round, man, in the 3rd round, Howie Roseman found a Super Bowl MVP in the 2nd round. And I know that you can say, well, Howie Roseman is such a great GM. I mean, you can't just compare Brad to him. Like, Howie Roseman's been doing it for a while. The point is, you see what Howie Roseman's been doing. He's been drafting win-now guys. Name a better GM recently than Howie Roseman, than Les Snead, all these guys. You have to look at what they're doing and the similarities that they share and try to put that in your own game plan.
I think this is a great comment. That got up north. Houston, Wingo were late round picks. I will throw shit at the wall all day and hope one sticks. I don't mind that. It's the 2nd and 3rd rounders that are the issue. Like, again, am I going to hold? Am I trying to hold Brad's feet to the fire for missing on a guy like James Houston? No, it's more about those second-round picks to me. It's the Pascals, it's the Levis. I would even throw, honestly, Broderick in there. I know he was a fourth, but still, you found Amon-Ra in the fourth. I know he plays a different position, but still, like Brad has found value there before.
Again, though, the late round picks, though, like I gave the ones of the last two Super Bowl winners some of their leading, the sack leaders, and it's like Nolan Smith, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Mike Dana, Chris Jones. Like I know that's those like 30s, late. Like all right, Milton Williams, rounders. Josh Sweat, Mike Dana. Like those are some that those guys found and they took and they hit, and it's like those are the top two. And I know they might have taken some that didn't hit, but again, it's about like you have to find these guys. And like we're in year 5, boys, going into year 5. You haven't found another complimentary edge to Hutch.
No,
not through the draft, not through free agency, and not through a trade. You haven't. And then maybe Za'Darius is that guy. And when he comes back with Hutch, maybe we're overlooking Za'Darius Smith a little bit. But either way, it's like you have to build that defensive line and continue to build it.
Yeah, I want more depth. More depth. Wilson says the Rams don't draft DBs like Branch and fucking Kirby, dude. No GM hits every time. No,
that's the point.
Hold on. We've already stated that he's not supposed to hit every time. That's fine. But it's the amount he's missed, especially early picks. And no one's arguing Branch or Kirby, bro.
No, I think his point is Brad has done good in different positions. He has. Yes. He's drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. He's drafted great linebackers. He's gotten Kirby and Brian Branch. He's got hopefully Terrion works out. Super Bowl Wilson. He has done a great job. But it's the fact, and again, this is just the part of like, hey, this team is very well built. Like he has built up this team extremely well. But there are parts of this team where it's like, Amon-Ra St. Brown just said it last week. You need to get a pass rush to be able to help out your secondary. Like the wide receiver one said it himself. And it's like, that's just the only part that, again, it's not like that Brad's been terrible. It's just like, hey, that's the one miss. And it needs to get figured out this offseason because you need it next year.
It would help. It would help Kirby and Brian if you could get to the quarterback without completely blitzing. You can rush 4, which is easier said than done. But of course, it's going to help all those guys. And Terron Arnold. Lion Syndicate, appreciate you, man. He says Broderick was a 3rd. Actually, you are right. I was wrong on that. 96 overall. Traded a 4th and 2 5s to get him. Wow. Sorry, guys. Cannot let that slide. Hey, you shouldn't. You should not let that slide. It's a big.
I was all in on Broderick too. I hope this year he ends up being something, but
it's just.
That's kind of a.
it is what it is. Like again, like 2 things can be true. Brad's a great GM. Brad's flaw is drafting defensive linemen. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
And maybe this year he hits on every pick, or every defensive lineman pick, and we're going, wow, great job. All we're saying is we're stating, man, that's what I expect this year. Find that answer. We're in year 5. Let's get that answer. The future next to Hutch.
Edge to the D.
Not a Za'Darius like a 1-year, 2-year guy.
No,
get the future. I want the future next to Hutch. That should be the priority.
Yeah, because it really is. Like, if you do think about it, outside of Hutch, they have never, like, and Brad the last 4 years has never prioritized edge. Like, he's got these tweeners that can go in and out.
No, they've never had it.
And you've never really, like, and you see great franchises just constantly bringing in edges, and he never has. So, like, if Za'Darius was to leave or they move on from him, or even after next year, it's like, who's your edge rusher then if you don't draft one? Like, what are you going to do? Oh, you're going to bring in another hurt player like Marcus Davenport? That's where it's like a little bit of a situation where it's like, at least at like safety, you have Iffy, kind of that 3rd guy, at corner. Now, the fact that you prioritize that, and you got Carlton, you got Terrion, you got a Meek, you went and got Ennis Rakestraw. Like you found depth. Wide receiver, you keep bringing in depth. You drafted J-Mo after you already had Amon-Ra, bringing in depth. Like running back, you have D-Mont, get Gibbs. Like there's constant depth. Offensive line, edge. It's like it's just ignored. Like, hey, we really don't ever want to build out this edge group.
Yeah, shout out Lion Syndicate, man. Appreciate you for tuning in, brother.
Legend
says, well, who would you call the future that's in this upcoming draft? Not being condescending, I really just want to know. Well, Key, and even though people are going to say, well, you think you're better than Brad Holmes? No, I don't. Brad's obviously far better than me at identifying talent, so I expect Brad to figure that out. Like, I'm not going to tell Brad how to do his job, who to draft. There's going to be guys I like, and we'll break down guys that I just like watching. I think they'll be good players, but that's up to Brad. Like, the discussions about just please don't miss. Like, we got to have more than just Aiden and Aleem here. You got to. That's part of the job. But I guess the topic I do want to get into ties to what we're talking about, because the Eagles won the Super Bowl. in a dominant fashion. Okay, dominant fashion. Going into this next season, Lions have an offseason. The Eagles have an offseason. The Eagles got to re-sign, like you mentioned, Zach Bond or Josh Sweat, who are both very good players. But I guess the conversation I'm going to dive into is not just are the Eagles the team to beat in the NFC, because they are, but how do you think the Lions match up with a team like that, and what do they have to do to be able to take a team like that down next season? Where would you guys go, Klotzy? What do you think about it? Matching up with the Eagles after an offseason.
I mean, looking at the Eagles, the thing is, they're not going anywhere. They're in a very similar situation with the Detroit Lions. Jalen Hurts is on a part of his contract where it's really not eating them up to, I believe, 2027. Jared Goff's contract really isn't kicking in. They got both of the receivers signed. They're not going anywhere. Saquon's going to be back. Lane Johnson, he might be gone, but when you look at their offensive line, they'll figure it out. Philadelphia never fails to have a bad offensive line. Offensively, I do think the Lions have an advantage because especially when you look at just the pure talent there, I think the Lions on paper, I like what they have at the skill positions more, especially when it comes down to Laporte and Dallas Goedert. But when you just look at it, the defensive side of the ball, you can't argue there isn't a gap. When you look at Zach Bond, I'd imagine he's probably going to be franchise tag. There's no way you bring a guy in who was not off the streets, but was off of special teams. I believe he's in New Orleans. And then you bring him in and he's an all-pro. They're not going to let him walk. They're probably going to let Milton Williams walk. That's fine. You have Jordan Davis. Josh Sweat came out and said he really doesn't have any intentions of leaving Philly. He's not going to command a lot of money. He'll be fine just getting another Super Bowl ring. He's been there for a while. The Lions, the only weakness that they have compared to it is the front seven, but it's the most important spot because the Philadelphia, they have young guys. The Detroit Lions, Alex Anzalone is probably the best linebacker that they have, older guy. The Philadelphia, like we just talked about, Zach Bond, behind him, they got Nakobe Dean, who's hurt, but he's really starting to pick up. Between Nakobe Dean and Nolan Smith, at the rookie years, they were both kind of like, okay, are both these guys misses? But in the second year, they turned it up and they turned into really good players. Safety and probably Aiden Hutchinson defensively is the only advantage that the Detroit Lions have. I understand that that Kelvin Shepard could bring a lot, but I don't see Vic Fangio's going anywhere. I mean, he just got a Super Bowl ring. He's not going to be a head coach anytime soon. Besides that point, like he's up there in age, so they're probably going to keep Vic Fangio around for a while. So they're going to have the number one defense again in the NFC. You have to find offensively a way to match that. You got to keep the offensive line strong. Detroit does have the only offensive line that can match up with Philadelphia's defensive line consistently. I think the Chiefs' offensive line is good, but that's obviously an elite defensive line across from you. The Lions do have an elite offensive line. I think they're pound for pound on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively, there's a little bit of a gap between the Lions and the Eagles, and especially when you look at Cooper DeJean, pick six, rookie, 22 years old, Quinyon Mitchell, rookie. They're going to have the corner advantage for a while as well, so there's a massive gap, I think, when it comes down to personnel long-term between the Lions and the Eagles right now.
Yeah, I mean, Klotz is spot on. I do think, like when you look at it, just the biggest thing going into this season for the Lions, like we know the players and what they have, and when injuries come back, the guys that are injured come back, especially defensively, you're going to find out quickly. Like, I think the biggest thing, honestly, just the biggest concern with it is like, how is Kelvin Shepard going to adjust to being the DC? And John Morton as well. Like, how is Johnny Morton going to kind of adjust to being the OC and that staff? Like, I think that's the two biggest like question marks for me going into the season. You have two new coordinators. Like you saw 2 years ago, the Eagles go to the Super Bowl, lose both coordinators, bring in two new guys. And then they have the year that they did. They had a great regular season, but towards the back half, you saw things kind of fall apart. I think that's the biggest thing going into this year. And the Eagles, like, I mean, they're almost in a similar situation. Like Vic Fangio, he's going to probably be back, but they're losing Kellen Moore. And like they're offensively, like they do have the weapons just like the Lions do. It's just like you're going to have to hope that, hey, you find an OC that's going to be able to come in and make a statement and kind of help that offense continue to do what they did last year with Saquon. And it's easy because you have Saquon. I think for the Johnny Mo show here in Detroit, you have Jameer, you have Demont, you have Amon-Ra, you have J-Mo, you have the best offensive line. Same thing in the Philly. So I just think going into next year, boys, I don't think like, if I'm just being quite frankly, like, yeah, the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champs. Like going into next year, like, yes, they are the team to beat. Everyone knows that. Like anytime you play the defending Super Bowl champs and they're in your division or in your conference, like, yeah, that's your team to beat. Like you want to prove that you're better than them because they just won it. Just like in college football, Michigan wins a natty. The next year, Ohio State, like they want to beat Michigan and there's a conversation. They couldn't beat them. And it's like, oh, well, they still won the championship though. So it's like, to me, it's the same thing here in Detroit. It's I still think the Lions are right here. If you make a move like edge rusher and you kind of build up this team and get more pieces this offseason, those are the best 2 teams in football and the Chiefs. And those are the top 3 teams in football. Like, I don't think that next year the Lions are going to have a big drop off. I still think they're going to be a top 5 team from week 1 to the playoffs. And depending if you have them at 5, at 1, at 2, at 3, they're just going to fluctuate. They have one of the tougher schedules. But the Eagles, like, they're up there now. Like, there were times this year, boys, where we had the Eagles at 7, the Eagles at 6 in our power rankings. Like, no, like, we know now the roster they have, they're up there. And it's the same with the Lions. Even though the Lions lost in their first round, in the divisional round, that's still a team that a lot of NFL teams look around and go, I don't want to play this Lions team. They're unbelievable. Like, this roster is stacked top to bottom.
Yeah, the thing, I think the Lions, are they the team to beat the Philadelphia Eagles? Absolutely they are. And how do you beat them? You have to be able to get after Jalen Hurts. And you saw the Chiefs, like Steve, like Spags is the best blitzing DC in the league. And they struggled to get to Jalen Hurts consistently. Chris Jones was double teamed. They ran out of answers. The play calls where they did get to him, there was a penalty. So there was other mistakes too. But they're going to have to get after him. And guess what? He's got the best offensive line protecting him, or at least the top 2. So it's going to be difficult. You're going to be squaring off with a team that has just as good of an offensive line as you do. So what does that mean? That's why it ties back to you have to get more guys on the defensive line, specifically in the first round here, or via trade or via free agency, whatever it is, because you got to be able to make Jalen uncomfortable. They're already really good at stopping the run. That's been the identity of this defense over the last couple of years. But if you can't get to them, you are cooked. Because you saw last night Jalen in that pocket sitting there chilling. He's completing passes that even I doubted that Jalen Hurts can make consistently. And he showed that even guys like me that were critical of him were wrong. Like if he's protected, he'll make you pay. And Saquon didn't run for a bunch of yards yesterday either.
They shut Saquon out last night.
That's the thing. And that's why it's so important, because we talk about it all the time with the Lions offensive line. It travels. Anywhere they go, it travels. Same thing with defensive lines, man. No matter the weather, it travels. You play in Philly next year, that defensive line will travel. It's the same thing. Again, would you like it to be in Ford Field? Of course. But even if it's not, that's going to be the key to taking down the Eagles. It's not just stopping the run, but on these 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and long, whatever it is, you got to be able to get after them. You got to be able to create pressure, because they still got guys on their offensive line, great players, like Hall of Fame players. So that's going to be the challenge for them. And of course, I want to help out my rookie defensive coordinator. So I'd like it to get him more talent. But that's really the big thing. The secondary, of course, but I'm assuming they're going to re-sign Carlton. I'm assuming, again, Terrion's going to take that next step.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to, hey, what's that front 7 look like?
There are still, like, that's the thing. I think there's like people in like, again, this is where it's like we had the criticism of the edge and Brad Holmes looking at it and seeing what the D line did last night. People forget though, like they still have a great defense. Like that defense, when those guys like Anzo healthy, Hutch back healthy, Aline back healthy, like all these guys back healthy, and when this defense has all of their pieces, it's great. And then if like these points, it's like if you add more to this defense, it could be a top 5 defense next year. Like Kelvin Shepard's going to have a top 5 roster, top 5 defense. Can he get it to the top 5? We'll see. We don't know. It's a rookie coordinator. Same offensively. Like, will John Morton be able to keep that offense in the top 5? I don't know. We'll see, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, that's what I think they're going to be just fine next year. I've talked to a lot of people. There's people who do think like Super Bowl window's over, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I'm not going to go and say that stuff. Like, again, there's a point where, I'm not just up here spitting out haterade. I'm talking about things that I do think Brad needs to improve on. But if I'm keeping it a buck, like I always try and do, the window's still open. Is it going to get harder over the next couple of years? Yes, it will, guys, because guys are going to start getting paid. That's just the truth. So, unfortunately, it will get harder, and you're going to have to really rely on the draft to supplement players leaving, because it's going to be hard to keep everybody. That's why this next 2-year window, I'd like to see Brad be a little more aggressive, whether that's in the draft or, via trade. Because after a while, it's going to be hard unless you restructure. You'll probably be able to restructure Goff's contracts, so on and so forth. But yes, the window is still open. And the thing that I think, just kind of talking about taking down the Eagles, like I think people get lost And this word sustained success, which like, I agree. I saw someone tweeted out something. It's like, would you rather have, you really have one attempt to bite the apple or you have multiple attempts to bite the apple? It's not even just about biting the apple or trying to win the Super Bowl. It's about your chance. Is it the best chance you have? That's what you need. Does it guarantee a Super Bowl if you do some of the things that I wish the Lions would do? No, but it puts you in a position to be able to do it. Right? The Eagles signing Saquon. Did it guarantee they'd win? No, but put them in a position to do it. Same with some of the other moves they've made. Trading for A.J. Brown, trading a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. Did it guarantee a Super Bowl? No. But it put them in a position to do it. So it's not about getting Myles Garrett or any of these guys that, will guarantee a Super Bowl, but it will help. And that's why, like, do you want multiple chances? Yes. But man, you don't want to end up like, not saying they are, but a team that just is always in the playoffs. They just can't get over the hump. They're always there.
Yeah.
You can do that. Like we saw the Rams. Now, I'm not saying do this, but I'm just pointing out an example. Again, I'm not saying you don't have to do this, but I'm pointing out an example. When you have a great GM, the Rams went all in and then redrafted again and drafted 4 studs on the D-line, and now they're back. And they drafted Cameron Kitchens, a great safety. They have Puka. Now they're rebuilding their offensive line. They're probably going to draft a quarter. Like if Brad's as good of a GM as we all think he is, he'll find a way to replace players anyway. So
he will. Yeah.
I look at sustained success as, yes, that's what you want, but I want a shot. Give me an appearance. I want to make the Super Bowl, guys. I don't want to talk about multiple Super Bowls when we haven't even made one. Let's just focus on making one before we talk about winning 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that's all. That's what they play the game to win. If they win a Super Bowl, we're all ecstatic. Everyone's happy. Like,
yeah, seriously though, like, and again, I've been the biggest on the Booner path and the biggest slappy. My worry gets to, it's like last year, 17-point lead to go to a Super Bowl and you blow it because you don't really have an edge rusher, and it's like you didn't make that move at the trade deadline, right? Like, and I'll admit that, but like this year, like you have a 15-2 team. You get guys that are injured and you don't have backups, and you're going through that. And yeah, it's not the best situation. You miss out on another Super Bowl. Like my worry is getting into year 3 and you lose again and fall short, and you didn't make the moves that we were talking about. And then you're like, we have to sit here. And I'm like, I don't want to have to. This is one of those things, Jeff, with you. Hey, I don't want to have to be like, hey, I was right, or hey, we were right. Like, no, like I want to go win a Super Bowl, but you have to, like, there are moves like these people who, if you want to put pushback on us for wanting to make these moves, all right, you just want Brad to sit back and not do anything this offseason and just hope for a Super Bowl next year after you just lost in the divisional round. Like, is that what people want? Genuinely, like that's like the conversation. I know the injuries, but like, you can't just say like, yeah, no, like you guys are wrong. Like Brad doesn't need to do anything. He's already done a good job. It's like, all right, now we're just content. And we haven't even gone to a Super Bowl yet, and you're content. That's a problem to me.
Yeah. It's a phase thing. It's not like this whole rebuild is done in one phase, 2 phases, 3 phases. Like Brad has even talked about it. Like there's phases to this rebuild. 2024 was the year. Okay, didn't get it. You saw what the flaw was. Now all we're saying is there's a glaring black spot on a white wall. You got to get some paint. You got to dip it in there. And not just, touch it up. No, fucking, you got to double coat it, triple coat it, quadruple coat it, whatever the fuck you have to do so you never have to see that black spot again. Because without that, you're not going to have the whole fucking wall painted. If you just keep going over with one coat, in a year or 2, it's going to show. In 3 years, it's going to show. If you just want to get the job done, do it right. Do it correctly. Look at what's been proven. Even like, we want to talk about, okay, you don't want to get a Myles Garrett. You don't want to get a Max Crosby. If you go back and look at the Kansas City Chiefs, who were just about to three-peat, they had to win a Super Bowl before that. What'd they do? They traded for Frank Clark. What'd they trade? A first-round pick. Now, Frank Clark wasn't the best in the regular season, but when you look at it, in 3 seasons, he had 10.5 sacks in the playoffs. In the first year they traded for him, in 2019, he had 5 sacks in the playoffs, and they won a Super Bowl. Where was it? The defensive edge position. They already had a phenomenal guy in Chris Jones. They already had that. But they're like, okay, Chris Jones is pretty good. I can't think of the other edge rusher that they had, but it's pretty much just like a fucking guy. Like it was a Marcus Davenport. They went out and they took a risk because Frank Clark, coming from Seattle, had a ton of off-field issues, by the way. They took a risk, and he was the guy that consistently put them in key spots, timely position, was giving them a sack, a forced fumble, a pass swatted down. He was a monster part in what they did, and they probably overpaid for him in a first-round pick. But do you think they're looking back and like, damn, we shouldn't have traded that first-round pick for Frank Clark, and we should have took defensive end X with the 28th overall pick? No. They traded that pick, and they got their dividends. That's what Brad Holmes has to be able to do. We brought up the Rams. We brought up the Eagles. It's just another example, though, of just how picks, they're not as valuable long-term down the road if you can get an impact player. You can be whining and bitching about bust, or you can get in, and we can critique it all you want, or you can just go get a proven guy that hits, and right away. Yeah, there might be some contractual issues, but if you can raise a Lombardi, if you can be like, you know what, goddamn, that was a lot of money that we just paid. Sheila Hamp just forked over a haul when it comes to financials. But you know what? We won the Super Bowl. Who gives a damn? Because you know what? People are going to be like, oh, Sheila Ford Hamp's a hero. Like, look what she's done for this. You think she's really going to care? No, you have to. At the end of the day, somebody said it in the chat earlier and applies everything. You pay for what you get. If you're going to pay Marcus Davenport $6 million 1 year, you're going to get a $6 million 1 year performance. It even lasts that long. And I think it applies to everything. So I'm just done with the half-assed things. Like, Brad Holmes is a guy that's so detailed, so thorough with everything he does, except for one spot, the defensive edge position. And we can say it 1,000 times, but until we see it actually addressed, he's probably addressed it 3-4 times and hit it once with Aiden Hutchinson. Like we said, Aleem McNeil was a hit. Defensive tackle. Aiden Hutchinson, the only hit on the edge position. If you want to say Josh Pascal is good, go ahead. He's not an edge rusher. He's a tweener. He's going to continue to be a tweener as he gets older and older and older. Guess what Josh Pascal is going to be? A defensive tackle. Same thing with Mekhi Wingo. Same thing with Pat O'Connor. All these tweener guys are just, as they get older, going to turn into defensive tackles and not get to the quarterback. So down the road, Josh Pascal is not going to turn into a 10-sack guy. No, he might develop into a 5-sack guy that's really good against the run, but he's not getting after the quarterback. So if he's not, and Aiden Hutchinson's getting triple teamed, who is? Darius Smith? You want to go get him? Fine. The Eagles, the Rams at that point, especially with Jared Verse, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, they're going to have a better defensive line. And they're probably, outside of maybe the Rams because of Stafford, they're probably going to have a mobile quarterback. So they're going to find a way to expose the even better players with playmaking ability. So it's so important. We're not, like I said, we're not in 2000. We're not in 2010 even. Like, the mobile quarterback is something that everybody besides the Rams, the Lions, I consider Baker Mayfield semi-mobile, but the Falcons, but they just got Michael Penix who can move. Like, the Lions are pretty much the only team outside of the Rams that do not have a mobile quarterback. So you got to find a way to compensate for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it too, watching the Eagles, they are one of the best teams in the league against mobile quarterbacks. You know why? And you saw last night against Mahomes. They crush the pocket. Like, their edges. They're crushing the pocket. Mahomes has to step up, and then he gets sacked. Like, they don't allow – and he had one scramble. He had a pretty good scramble, but it was called back, I think, for holding. But that's like another thing. They got dudes, and they're great against these mobile quarterbacks. Like, they built the thing up. Now, like, I see it still in the chat. Like, but the injuries. Like, guys, okay, let's hypothetically say this team was healthy. We'd still be talking about the answer on the other side of Hutch. So, like, let's just be honest here. Let's get
like, Davenport's probably going down. Like, you could, Davenport's going down. Yeah, like, that's where it's like, and like, you don't have Zadarius Smith at that point. You're sitting there with Levi and Josh, and it's that's a problem.
I want to make sure, like, again,
4 or 5 years with that.
No one's going to argue the injuries. We all agree it's unfortunate and it sucks, and it was like historic, like how many injuries they had. But we always knew Davenport was going down. We always knew. Yeah, like, let's be real.
Time. Maybe not in week 2 or 3.
No, but it was going to happen. He's been injured every year. Like, so it's like, so let's get past we're not arguing the injuries. So unless you're talking to a wall, no one's saying the injuries aren't the reason they lost this year. It is. But we're talking big picture, man. And I think you nailed it, Klotzy. It doesn't have to be bigger names, but it's got to be investments. And the guy like Frank Clark for the Chiefs. I mean, look at the Rams. They got a young defensive line. They had 16 sacks in 2 games. Yeah, they got after Darnold like 7 times. They got after Hurts like 9 times. I mean, they were
even. I know that we're talking about the defensive line, but I think it's important to even look at like the linebackers. How many sacks has Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone gotten? How many sacks has Derek Barnes gotten? It's just a lack of putting pressure on the quarterback. That's why it's so important. Jeff, you talked about it Friday. Like, Derek Barnes, good player, replace him with the guy that can do what Derek Barnes has and can get to the quarterback, whether that means drafting a guy in the second round. You cannot tell me there's somebody not in this world that's going to be available that can replace Derek Barnes and do what he does in coverage, stay a little bit more healthy, and also get to the quarterback at a more efficient level. If you look at these elite defenses, elite front sevens, they don't just have guys at the front four that can get to the quarterback, but they have outside linebackers. I understand the Lions have a 4-3, but you can find linebackers that can get to the quarterback at a more efficient rate. That doesn't mean that Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez are bad, but we saw Trevor Nowaski putting pressure on the quarterback this year. If Trevor, and this isn't a slight, Boone, but if you have Trevor Nowaski out there, imagine if that was a Shaq Barrett. And I know he's out of his prime, but I'm saying a guy like that where you're a Super Bowl winning team, Tampa Bay, you need a guy that can get to the quarterback a little bit better. Go upgrade it. Don't just stick with what you have. Find a better piece. A Shaq Barrett, bad example, but you get what I'm saying. You can upgrade to a guy. Robert Spillane doesn't cost that much money, but will give you better production.
Of course, you do that in there.
Robert Spillane.
Robert Spillane.
No, I think I think today was about hitting that nail on the head. We just had to discuss it, and for people that disagree that are still tuning in, God bless you, because
I would like. I just would like to make a statement. I do not think Brad Holmes is a loser.
No.
Yeah, that's the thing. People are so wrapped up in the word. And again, if it offended you, I'm sorry. I meant from the Super Bowl, the loser. Like, the Chiefs are a loser from the Super Bowl. Another loser from the Super Bowl, in my opinion, was Brad, given how important defensive linemen are.
I still love Brad Holmes. Brad Holmes is on the winner path with me.
It's like, if I'm eating Cheetos and I don't have a job and I'm sleeping every day, like, that's not like what I'm calling Brad Holmes. I'm not calling him like a straight loser. Like, I'm not trying to, but it did sound like that. And you know what? The wording, that's on me. But the point I was making is from the Super Bowl, like, he's a loser from the Super Bowl.
There's nothing wrong with eating Cheetos, man.
Yeah, Cheetos are fine. All right,
that was unbelievable. That was too low of a shot.
I'm not calling him like a bum. He's clearly not. He's a top 5 GM.
Wording, Jeff. I had that. We talked the wording and tone. Like, there are people that have bad wording and bad tone out there, and it does fire me up. And when I did see that tweet, the wording of it right away, I text you back and said, Jeff.
This world is. I think this world is just soft. I really do. People are so obsessed with how something sounds, not what's being said. That's the problem.
Okay, it is. I told you, it's like people clip things and they'll clip like a sentence that's so out of context. That's what happened to you today. But it was like, it's an avoidable thing. It's definitely avoidable.
If you said, Jeff, you know what, dude? You're a fucking idiot because of blah, 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 blah. I would say, well, I would listen to what you're calling me a fucking idiot about, but I wouldn't be like, well, you called me a fucking idiot. Like, disregard the actual thing being said. Like, no, I'm a fucking idiot. I messed up, like those people that are like, oh my God, guys, like, clearly Brad's a good GM, man. That's not the point, but glad we were able to discuss that today because it needed to be talked about. And even if you disagree and you're tuning in, well, appreciate you. I did want to bring this up. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP. Can't believe I'm saying it because he looked pedestrian all year. So apparently Philly fans are like, hey, he proved all you guys wrong. He's elite. I mean, I'm just fair. I'm just telling you what I saw. Okay. I'm just telling you what I saw. So where are we ranking Hurts now in the NFC? Does this change anything for you? What's your updated NFC core? Hurts number 1?
It has to be. Like, there's no way. Let's think about this, okay? Let's truly think about this because you can talk about whatever you want in the regular season. What defines quarterbacks and how great you are, how good you are, is how you execute in the postseason because he wasn't playing like in the division round, Jalen Hurts played very well. In the last 3 years, he's been to 2 Super Bowls. In both of those Super Bowls, he's outperformed Patrick Mahomes. We talk about Lamar Jackson all the time. We talk about Joe Burrow all the time. We talk about Josh Allen all the time. Joe Burrow's only beat Patrick Mahomes once. And has he outplayed him in all of them? Maybe. Jalen Hurts clearly has on the biggest stage. How many quarterbacks in the NFC can say that? None. Matthew Stafford has a Super Bowl ring. So does Jalen Hurts now. Who has more playoff performances? If you want to talk about the team around Jalen Hurts, look at the team around Matthew Stafford. Because when I think Jalen Hurts isn't the most talented quarterback, but I think at some point Jalen Hurts deserves his credit. Matthew Stafford more talented. Who would I rather have? Give me Jalen Hurts. Why? Because he simply won. Is Jaden Daniels talented? Yes. Would I rather have him or Jalen Hurts? Give me Jalen Hurts. Jared Goff or Jalen Hurts, it's not even a question at this point because they both been to Super Bowls, lost. Who's been able to get back? Jalen Hurts won a national championship, won a Super Bowl MVP, can run. He has legs. Run out of fucking breath, boys. I'm sick.
He's passionate. He's just passionate right now. He's
Sorry, boys.
Jimmy Butler meme right now, dude.
But when you look at it, the guy, like, it's one of those things where you're going to try to pick him apart. What is Jalen Hurts bad at?
I would say I don't think he's bad, but it's definitely probably because he's an athlete. He's a very, very talented quarterback when it comes to what he can do with his legs. But I think consistently beating teams in the pocket, that's probably his biggest question mark. And he showed that.
Teams in the pocket, though. Beating teams in the pocket. What has Jalen Hurts done then more than any quarterback in the NFC over the last 3 years? Beat teams. Like, he's won.
All right. I gotta cut you off.
Hold on.
Can't do this.
Because when you look at head coaching situations,
this is ridiculous.
Jalen Hurts has yet to have a season with a back-to-back offensive coordinator. He's never had the same offensive coordinator back-to-back years, and he's still won. Jalen Hurts, when you talk about what makes quarterbacks good, it's wins. And I understand.
I'm done. No,
if I were,
that's why I cut you off. No, because
I've
had arguments with you a million times about Jared Goff and Jeff and you two on this show. You guys constantly told me wins is not a quarterback stat. Both of you. And don't say you didn't. So don't use that as the argument with Jalen Hurts. I'm taking Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts. He's a better quarterback, top to bottom, all around. Jaden Daniels on this football team wins the Super Bowl as well. He wins it 2 years ago with them. I love it, Klotz. You can't have that argument with me, the wins, because for years I've been battling with. No, hold on.
So
I've been battling.
I never even got.
Your point was going too long because you kept saying wins. You kept saying wins.
Go ahead.
You kept saying wins, Klotzy.
Okay,
I've been criticized for 2 years, giving the stats out about Jared Goff and wins. And all of a sudden, you just win games? Oh, that's the quarterback stat. That's not. Come on.
Booner, okay, in the wins, when Jalen Hurts should have been, if he would have been the MVP if he didn't get hurt week 17, he was literally going to be an MVP.
Good.
He put up numbers.
I picked him to win MVP that year.
So put up numbers. MVP type of candidate. Loses both those C's, start out 10-1, gets hurt, doesn't play well. Okay. He's not the best quarterback in the NFL. We're talking about in the NFC this year. Offensively, wasn't the greatest. Had Saquon, leaned on Saquon, didn't get in the way. They were the 2 seed. They won 14 games. Defense, especially early on, was not playing its best ball. But at the end of the day, in the Super Bowl, he didn't just win. He was a Super Bowl MVP putting up numbers. If you're asking
this
me,
is recency bias, Klotz, at its finest. This is recency bias at its finest.
Super Bowl MVP.
This is recency bias. This is recency bias at its finest.
40.
They had to go. Klotz, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'd put him at number 2 in the NFC, and I'd give him the respect. I'm one of those people who.
Recency bias. Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback. We saw C.J. Stroud saying he should be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
I've seen Jalen Hurts make it to 2 Super Bowls in 3 seasons.
But wins isn't a quarterback stat. Wins isn't a quarterback stat. You've told me that for my whole life.
If you were
since
a
I've known
big
you.
part of that,
you have told me
matters.
that forever.
Who is the GOAT? Who is the GOAT?
You have told me that forever.
Because Super Bowl wins.
You have told me that forever. That quarterback wins is not a stat for a quarterback. I mean, you're just as much as I'm talking over you, you're talking over me. Don't act like the victim now because you're doing it
Booner,
to me
I've
too.
said like 10 minutes. I've said like
you've talked for like 5 minutes. I try to come back. Like, don't play the victim card. Here's the victim card. Take it
quietly this whole show because there's one segment that I truly wanted.
Come on, don't play it. We're going back and forth having a good argument. Don't play the victim card now. We're having a good conversation back and forth. Listen, Jalen Hurts, he deserves all the respect around the world from what he's done. All of the respect. He is a good quarterback. He knows how to win. When he's put in a good position. But at the end of the day, this year they added Saquon to help him out. They added that defense was one of the best in the league, if not the best. There were pieces around him. They had to go get Kellen Moore because he couldn't work with the last OC. So like there are parts of this team where they had to go build around him, right? And that's the argument for years that I said about Jared Goff. I kept bringing up the wins. Everyone always pushed back at me. You did, Klotz. Jeff did. Easy did. Spencer did. Everyone said, Booner, wins is not a quarterback stat. Doesn't matter. Okay, for Jalen Hurts, I give him his credit for winning a Super Bowl. He deserves Super Bowl MVP. He showed out. He's been one of the most consistent, if you want to say most consistent quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 4 years, I will take that. And he deserves the credit for it. He almost won an MVP one year that I called. And I said, and Jeff, I remember that argument with me and you. I can't remember who was the other guy who won it, but you were like, no, he's not going to win. I said, he's going to win the MVP. I remember that specifically. But it's like, hey, Jaden Daniels is a better all-around football player with him. I know if you only saw 1 year, but if we're being honest, that ceiling is way higher. This year, he had a better year. If you put Jaden Daniels on this team, they're winning the Super Bowl. They are.
That's insane to
They
say.
are. It's not insane. They are.
You're telling me if Jaden Daniels had to lean on a run game like Jalen Hurts did all year, and then in the Super Bowl against Steve Spagnuolo, Patrick Mahomes, that running back gets 50 yards, and Jaden Daniels throwing a 50-yard seam route.
Anytime a quarterback wins a Super Bowl, the next year he's the best in the league. That's his argument.
We're acting like Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl just went Saquon.
No, hey, anytime a quarterback wins the MVP in the Super Bowl, instantly best in the league. I get that point.
You're talking about Jaden Daniels consistently. Jalen Hurts has consistently won and been a defensive coordinator's worst nightmare. If you want to talk about last season when they lost in the wild card round, okay, he took them to the Super Bowl the year prior. When you look at what he did this year, he won a Super Bowl and did what nobody else could do besides Tom Brady. That means something. We're talking about a rookie quarterback here who's been there one time. To say that he would step in and do exactly what Jalen Hurts did and win against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, I think that's crazy to say. We've never seen a rookie in any time in NFL history win a Super Bowl. To say that he would go up against Patrick because there's a good roster around him, I think is completely arrogant, because we've seen people that are elite quarterbacks go up against Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and lose with great rosters.
I think that's fair, but Jaden Daniels is better. Like, I'm taking Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts.
It's like saying he's better than Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson because he would have won the Super Bowl. Like,
I'm taking Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts. That's a fact.
If you want to say that because of skill, that's fine. But I'm going with what I've seen. It's not like Jalen Hurts has been carried.
I would love to see Klotz at the beginning of the year. You do your top 5 NFC quarterbacks. I guarantee you don't have Jalen Hurts in your top 3 or even almost your top 5. But all of a sudden, just because he won the Super Bowl and he won the MVP, it's like, oh, this guy's like, no, he deserves his respect. But there are guys who I think have better skill sets than him.
You know,
and that's
crazy,
it. He knows how to win. But my whole life, I was told quarterback stats isn't a win. Or quarterback wins isn't a stat.
You know what's
I was told that my whole life by you, not me. I was the one that argued that. But the last 3 years being on air with all of you guys, the argument against me for Jared Goff has been quarterback wins isn't a stat. But all of a sudden, hey, he's won his whole career. All he does is win.
Booner,
all he does is win. Oh, so now it's a stat when it fits your narrative. Very good argument.
There's a difference between regular season wins and a Super Bowl win. The number 1 quarterback on my top 5 list was Matthew.
Added Saquon. They added defense. They had the best defense in the league. They have the best offensive line in the league. Let's not act like Jalen Hurts went out there on his own and won. They have the best offensive line. They have Saquon Barkley. They have the best defense.
So when Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl,
Xavier D. Nick Foles is the best quarterback in the NFC after the year he won a Super Bowl. Got the job done. Got the win.
When Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl, who did they trade for that year? Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, Odell Beckham. When Tom Brady won the Super Bowl, super team. Any quarterback that wins a Super Bowl pretty much has a super team, except for pretty much
this is a super team.
Jalen Hurts, the Eagles are a super team. Go look at the last 5 teams that have won the Super Bowl, Booner. If you look at Matthew Stafford, he's
won the best offensive line and the best defense in the NFL.
Yards in the Super Bowl.
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. This was a great. Don't act like he had nothing around him. Do not act like Jalen Hurts had nothing around him. That's ridiculous, Klotz.
I just said they had a
They went and hired Kellen Moore. They got Big Fangio. They loaded up. They went all in this year on the Super Bowl. I don't care if Saquon was locked up. They still have everyone.
Who are you talking to? All those points you just said, I never said. I never said that he.
But you're saying all these other teams had super teams. This team was.
You're making my point, Booner. That's what I'm saying. All the quarterbacks in the NFC and the NFL. You're saying that they added Saquon. How is he good? Every team adds a Saquon before they go into Super Bowl. Practically,
that doesn't make Jalen Hurts the best quarterback in the NFL automatically just because he won Super Bowl MVP.
You're right, not the NFL. NFC, Booner.
I still would take Jaden Daniels.
Jaden
Daniels is still better quarterback. It's a fact. It's a fact.
It's not. In
it
your
is.
Mind, it may
your
be
only argument is a rookie can't win a Super Bowl. He's still that doesn't make him not the better quarterback.
Differing opinions, and they don't tend to agree. This is one. Just because
Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback.
You strongly believe in doesn't make it a fact. I'm not saying a fact. I'm saying my opinion. I'm not going to be mad at you for saying that Jaden Daniels is a more talented quarterback.
Court again. Come on now. What are we doing?
You guys,
We're arguing. We're having a good argument. You don't need to be like,
quarterback
look at
who
me.
outperformed Patrick
Come
Mahomes
on.
in the biggest moment twice, is a Super Bowl MVP, and has been to the Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years. That sounds elite to me.
I think it's
That's the
good, but
quarterback
they have a
I would
great
love to
football
have.
team. They have a great
So,
team.
Jalen
It's
Daniels
not
is
like Jalen
fourth-
Hurts did everything. Like
He
every
didn't.
single game.
He did no
They-
Super no Super
I mean,
Bowl
they
winning
just they
quarterback
had
has
the
done
offensive
everything.
player. They had the whether he got shut down in the Super Bowl or not. They had the offensive player on their player of the year on their team all season long for 20 plus games. Like, let's take a step
If
back.
this
for a
was
second.
Jared Goff and somebody was making this argument,
Why didn't he win the Super Bowl before? 2 years ago.
He was playing. How many quarterbacks have beaten Patrick Mahomes?
They didn't have the best defense around him.
Tom
Didn't have-
Brady.
They
Tom
had
Brady.
to upgrade their team. They had to upgrade their team. Bottom line.
Yeah, that's how you win a Super Bowl. Like I don't like Booner. If somebody was making this point with Jared Goff, you'd be losing your mind and saying that's what good teams do. You're gonna blame Jalen Hurts for him having a good team.
Yeah, but like
No,
Jared
this is
Goff
the
puts the
same
numbers
argument we
up
make
as
for
well.
Jared Goff.
Like Jared Goff
If
puts the
Jared-
numbers up as well.
If Jared
and he
Goff were to
wins.
win the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes and be Super Bowl MVP, you're damn right he'd be number one on my list, numero uno, because he's made 2 Super Bowls, more than Matthew Stafford, and he's won a Super Bowl MVP.
Can I ask
More
you this,
than
Klotzy? Going into next year, if you had to pick a quarterback to restart your franchise with, are you going Jalen Hurts or Jaden Daniels?
Equal situations,
Yes.
then I would go Jalen Hurts. He's shown that
That's
he's going
crazy to
That's
restart
you
your
could pick-
franchise.
to restart a franchise. If you're
To
saying
start your
level playing
franchise.
fields, are they both year one? Or are they where they're at right now?
Where they're at right now, going into
Give me
next
Jalen
year.
Hurts. Give me Jalen
That's
Hurts.
so
If they're-
crazy, dude.
That's fine.
Jaden Daniels is going to be on that level of the Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons, Patrick Mahomes, like those top tier guys.
I
Jalen Hurts will
understand.
never be that. Like Jalen Hurts is good, but like for the
Jaden
next
Daniels
5 or
from
6 years, Jaden Daniels is going to be that next level. He's going to be that next level. Like that's the difference. Like Jalen, I think Jalen. This and I hate this because it feels like I'm discrediting Jalen Hurts after he just won a Super Bowl. I'm not. No, he's great. I've given that. I would put him at like number 2. No, stop. You're acting like I'm saying he's 6th in NFC. He's like the second best quarterback in the NFC right now. He just won a Super Bowl MVP, but it's Jaden Daniels is the better player. Like I'm taking Jaden Daniels 10 times out of 10 for his career over Jalen Hurts.
No, I mean,
Like that's ridiculous, man.
He better win a Super Bowl next year.
And I mean, what it took Jalen Hurts how many years? 6 years?
It took
What are we
him.
doing?
He's
Is
in
it year 6?
4. He's
Year
in
6.
Or year. He's been playing
Yeah,
for 5
yeah,
years.
got
So
you
in
there.
5 years, he better make 2 Super Bowls and win one of them and win a Super Bowl MVP.
Okay.
yeah, that's the
Put him on
tough-
the Eagles in that 6-year span. I bet you he wins 2 Super Bowls.
Well, he's on the.
I can't believe you're saying Jalen Hurts is better than Jaden Daniels.
Hey,
That's the biggest recency bias of all time.
Dude, we're talking about a rookie quarterback versus a guy who's been in the
I don't
NFL
care.
in 3
Just
years.
because you're a
Recency
rookie doesn't
bias
mean you
is
can't be
such a-
your skill set can't be better.
What do you skill set can be there, but if your skill set can win you games, he's a rookie quarterback. We can talk about skill set all you want, but if you're not effectively winning
gosh.
games in big moments,
Oh, but yep, again, winning is now a quarterback stat when it has
when
it's
you're the
for you
huge
guys.
when you're
But for
playing
Jared
like a
Goff,
Super Bowl
doesn't
MVP
count.
in the biggest moments,
Yep.
whew,
Yep.
No, you guys, I think you both, you know what, you both were spitting, but I'm with Boone on this. I would take Jane Daniels going into next year. But where Jared Goff, where does he rank? 3rd, I guess, at this point.
I'll probably throw him 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
because
no way you can
it's
put Goff in
really
front of Stafford.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you guys were both making good point. The biggest thing is hard, and that's why I don't believe quarterback wins is a stat because it's a team game.
Oh, it's
And,
not. Weird.
It depends how you look at it. I mean, if you want to look at
when it fits people's, it's like PFF. When it fits your narrative,
Yeah.
it's good, but when it doesn't, it's not good.
no, like I look at like for example, well, we can go with Jane Daniels. Like Jane Daniels this year played excellent. They're 12-5. He's a rookie. They make it to the NFC Championship game. Like he had some good pieces, but not. I mean, that was a lot of that was Jane Daniels. You know what I mean? That was him. Like, and that's how I look at some situations. It's like they might have a good situation, but how is that player?
What
That's
did Jalen Hurts do as his rookie year? Jaden Daniels
that
took
I
a team to Jalen Hurts or Jaden Daniels.
Oh, yeah,
took a
he
team to the
wasn't-
NFC Championship.
He was like, what was he, a 2nd round pick or something?
Yeah, I just don't think. Yeah, I don't think he even. I think he started like 2 games as a rookie. I don't even think year 2 he went to an NFC Championship game.
Can we have the GOAT conversation though? Like, what does this do for Mahomes' legacy like yesterday? Because I think it took it's not that I don't want to
Oh,
say
damn.
that it's an over. I'm not saying that. It was literally he was on pace to do something that's never been done before. So I understand that. But if you look at him in the Super Bowls, like let's just keep it a stack. Patrick Mahomes is he has rings, wins more than he loses, but 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's what Mahomes is giving you in the Super Bowl. Brady, hey, look at his Super Bowl stats. Way better.
Yeah.
Way better. So again, is it always about the stats? I mean, in this situation, when you're trying to be the greatest, people are going to nitpick things like that. And Mahomes in Super Bowls, for whatever reason, he doesn't, he's not taking over these games. He had, 3 touchdowns? Who was that again? Was that last year?
That was the 3 touchdowns was versus the Eagles last time, I think.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
So he had the game.
He had like 180 yards in 3
That
touchdowns.
was probably his best in terms of passing touchdowns.
With only 180 yards too, which is crazy.
So I think it took a hit? Yeah. And I think for Tom Brady fans, like I'm a big Mahomes guy. I was talking about how he's on his way. I think yesterday definitely he took a hit for the Patrick Mahomes to be the next Tom Brady. Can he get there? He has a lot of career left, but man, that performance yesterday, like I don't want to say it was garbage time, the stats he put up late, because he had to try and come back and win. I get that. But it looked ugly, man. I mean, pick 6, another pick. I think he had like 80 yards. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. So I think it took a hit yesterday, boys.
I do think there is like a bit of a hit. I don't think it's like a big hit because there's still like, I mean, Mahomes can have so much time to be able to go out there and still get more Super Bowls and try and reach that 7 mark and like catch up to Brady. But it definitely took a hit. Like I mean, you look at the Brady, the 27-3 or 28-3. Like he comes back and wins that game, and he's the one leading those drives to go get field goals and at the touchdown at the end. Like he's the one that's doing that. And like I think there was a lot. Jeff, I looked at you yesterday and I said when it was 27-0, I was like, this is like storybook NFL. This is like lining up to be a storybook NFL type of deal. Like you saw the 28-3 with Brady, and now you're about to see the 27-0 with Mahomes and one up to Tom Brady as the GOAT. And like if he did that, then you can have like, but like he didn't do it, and he got Jeff. I don't even think it was a thing that they lost. Like he looked so bad. I think at the end of the 3rd quarter, he had like 60 passing yards. And all of his yards, like what did he have total? Yeah. What was the end?
I don't know the exact, but a lot of it.
I think they were just garbage stats. Like I think he had like 60 or 70 yards through 3 quarters until he just started.
Yeah, he had 257 yards.
Dude, 250. Dude, he had 60 or 70 yards through 3 quarters when the game was over. So like all those other yards were like, it looks like you see 250. No, dude, that was like the worst game of Patrick Mahomes' career. When you have the worst game of your career and you're supposed to be one of the greatest ever, and it's in a Super Bowl, like that's where the problem comes into place. Like that's where it's like Brady. I don't think Brady's ever had that bad of a performance in a Super Bowl. I mean, obviously early on, I'm a little younger, so I don't remember as much. But from what I'm seeing on, like, I don't think they're like that's crazy. 60, 70 yards through 3 quarters, the back-to-back interceptions, a pick 6, and then right after another interception. Like that was like, it was on Mahomes. I kept telling you during the stream, I was like, the defense actually wasn't playing that bad through 3 quarters. It was really just Mahomes could not do anything. The offense couldn't get going at all.
Yeah.
That was the storyline of the game.
When I knew it was over, it was the pick. It was, what was it? The pick before halftime, and then you come out of halftime and it's 3 and out. That one, I was like, it's over. Like
that
was their opportunity. Double dip, score, come out, score. Now it's an entirely different game.
That's where there's a little sense of like, at least to me, I think this game, like I want to give credit to these guys like Jalen Hurts, but like that defense, dude, like they shut down Saquon. And they did their job. It really came down to like Patrick Mahomes spotting the Eagles. How many points? 20-something points, essentially. Like the pick 6.
Yeah, they made Hurts beat them.
And then he fumbled it. He fumbled it, and they got short field. Like it literally, to me, like the storyline of that game is the Eagles defense at the end of the day. Like that Eagles defense dominated Mahomes, and Mahomes didn't do anything. But like I would think that offense, that Chiefs offense, dude, the pick six, the fumble on the short field, the pick with at the 10-yard line, and AJ Brown gets like a quick touchdown right after. And then you look at when the defense gets the interception on Jalen Hurts, and right away it's a 3-and-out. Like right there, that's 4 possessions to where all of those scores, that's 4 touchdowns, 28 points I put right on Patrick Mahomes. Like, and that's just being realistic. And that's where you look at it and you go, if Mahomes plays a good game in that offense, they probably win. That was literally just all Mahomes' fault, which is crazy. Like that's why it hurts. I think the legacy of that much, it makes it that much worse.
Yeah. Well, he's gonna have to do some work here going forward. So, but three-peat is, I mean, that's probably, unfortunately, the only opportunity he will have to do a three-peat. Though that's hard to do, especially in the NFL. You make a Super Bowl 3 straight times, that's hard. And I saw a stat too. It was like a reporter tweeted it out. I never thought about this. Teams have to travel as much as like where the Super Bowl is, depending on where the Super Bowl is. Like the team that travels the farthest has been losing like for like a decade.
That's tough.
I don't know what that is. Like Eagles going, it's like Philly to New Orleans and then Kansas City to New Orleans. I'm not saying that was the only reason. I'm not trying to put the blame, but it's just a weird thing to think about. Huh? I don't know.
That's tough for the Lions next year because it's in San Fran. I mean, what do you play like Kansas City? They're the only team that would be good would be like Buffalo, having to travel like side to side basically.
I'm not saying that was the only reason, but he put it out, and I was like, I never really thought about that ever, to be honest with you. Never. You know what I did think about was that halftime show that a lot of people, depending on if you're 45 and above, you didn't like it, and if
I've watched it back, it actually wasn't that bad.
No, 45 and above no one liked it. Well, I shouldn't say that. You know what I mean. But I will say this. The reality is with Kendrick Lamar, you knew what you had him there for. Okay, it wasn't to pump you up and get you hype. I'll just say that. That's not him. Okay, it's not really what his job was.
He was coming for blood.
He was coming for blood, but you got to really like his music. You got to be like, people are expecting this big extravaganza. Like there was a performance, and there was a ton of messages within the performance that were great. Like obviously, it wasn't targeted at me, but the messages within the performance, awesome. But like people that are Kendrick fans, like I'm not a huge Kendrick fan, but I understand that his catalog probably isn't most of like the people that were watching. Like they're probably not sitting there going, "Wow, he's really talking right now." Like, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, they're like, this guy's talking right now.
Yeah, Elton John wasn't up there, but it's just like one of those things where if you weren't a Kendrick fan, you didn't like it. If you were a Kendrick fan, you liked it. And my dad, like, he usually just like walks out of the halftime show, like turn the channel, go do some laundry. But he went to do some laundry and he came back up. He was like, "Oh, this is kind of nice." And I thought it was a nice switch up. I was tired of just like for me, like it's not like I have to listen to rap music.
Usher and Alicia Keys was good. That was good. Don't hate on that.
Like we're constantly just putting actors, like artists up, and it's from like music from like 2000, 1980, 1970. Like it's always like the nostalgia, and it's like, bro, can we just get something that's with the times? And it was nice to have that. It was refreshing. There wasn't like a shit ton of like propaganda that was anti-America, so I love that. Recently, it's always been like bashing America and everything that's gone for. Don't think there was much of that this year. I think it was bringing people together more than anything. So I liked it from Kendrick. I don't think there was anything you were like, "Oh, that sucks." Like he had Serena Williams up there, Crip dancing.
That was great too.
Like, come on. Like if that was Drake, everybody who hated it that was under the age of 45, to Jeff's example, everybody that's bitching about it would have loved it. So let's just relax.
My only criticism was Klotz was just I wanted some of the throwback songs that I listened to growing up.
Yeah, you could, but
that was
Kendrick
it.
Either way, that's
which is fine. And his new songs are good. Like his new music's good. I just like, and I told Jeff that last night. I was like, I just really wanted like, give me some throwbacks too. And he did a couple, but I wanted like the swimming pools and stuff. Like, I wanted some growing up, I listened to Kendrick. I wanted I wanted some of that mixed in there. And he didn't mix any of that in there. I think he did one of those songs, and that was it. But like, I wanted all of it. Like,
well, you gotta think though, bro, like his old stuff. Like, how many of that could he actually like? He was pushing the limit with not like us, and then like TV Off wasn't that bad, but like Good Kid, Mad City. There's not too many
That's fair.
tracks.
I
off
would have
there that
loved
you
it,
can just
dude.
say,
That would have.
yeah, Super Bowl. Just
I
play
think that's
it,
why I
like,
liked Usher, because it was like songs that like I knew all of them like growing up. I didn't know some of the Kendrick songs besides the big hits, the ones that he did towards the end.
I know who loved it. Chris Platty. I know
Yeah.
Chris Platty probably gave that thing 11 out of 10.
I've never seen someone love something more. Like you could see like the biggest couple that's been in a relationship or a marriage for 50 years. They love each other. Nope. Chris and Kendrick still loves them more than anyone else. That's just that'll never end. Yeah, I love Chris.
We got some mailbag questions. Let's get to it. Drop your questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. We'll start off with this one. That guy up north, Houston and Wingo were late. Oh, excuse me. That wasn't it. My bad. Wrong one. Mailbag, does Andy Reid deserve any blame for that offensive game plan heading into the game and inability to adjust all game, to not even attempt to establish a run game or just to the Eagles' rush? I mean,
what did you keep saying, Jeff, during the whole stream?
Yeah, and Tom Brady pointed it out early. Like, I think it was the second quarter, maybe halfway through, and they had one rush attempt. But once you got down, like, I understand. Like, but early in the game, they just gave up. They ran the ball one time with Kareem Hunt. I think they either lost a yard or gained a yard. That was it. They said, fuck it, we're out. We're just dropping back. Which, like, okay, do that against this defensive line. That's getting home with 4 guys. So, yeah, does Andy Reid deserve blame? Absolutely. He deserves blame. They didn't make adjustments
at all offensively.
No.
That was like
if you're not blocking, you got to have the problem is you got to have Travis Kelce start chipping, helping out. And you need him running routes. Like they need reinforcements now. You need Kareem Hunt to block.
You kept telling me you were like they built up this offensive line. The offensive line, it doesn't matter what you built. They were playing so bad. Like
no, they were getting bodied. Yeah,
they were getting destroyed. Like you could have had any offensive line. That D line was just dominating.
My point was like that Bucs Super Bowl. I think they missed both their tackles, so I can at least be like, okay, like like I'm willing to give him.
I mean, what's his name had to go to left tackle or whatever it was. That
played
move
like garbage. Just played like garbage.
That was brutal to watch. Mahomes just kept getting there. I think there was a possession he got sacked 3 times back to back to back.
All right, we actually have some more mailbags in here. All right, next one we're gonna get to. Appreciate that. Easy mailbag. Goff game changer or game manager?
Game manager.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
No,
just what he is.
No, he's a very good game manager. Very good.
Tom Brady, game manager. How many Super Bowls? 7.
Dom says, mailbag, is it fair to say the Super Bowl proved that Hurts fits the modern? Okay, well, the golf era is not over, but to his point, though, mobile quarterbacks are valuable. I mean, I'm not arguing with that. They are. It helps for sure.
Yeah.
If you have
definitely an advantage, but the game of football, like you can change it in any ways. The basic fundamentals of the game won't change. Like you can always have a pocket quarterback, but you have more of an advantage if you have a guy that can do both, obviously. It's nice to have a guy that can do both, but Jared Goff's still a very good quarterback in this league. He just can't do everything that some other guys can.
All right. Bull's turn. Mailbag. Goff or Hurts, who are you building a team around?
Hurts, for the exact reason we just brought up. There's no way. Like, we've seen Goff in a bad situation. He was bad. Like, we can't act like Jared Goff can carry a team better than Jalen Hurts. Like, that's insane. I understand if you want to say different reasons.
No. I mean, no, you're muted. I'll say it's got to be Jalen Hurts right now.
It's not even a question.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think Boone's mic is like, we lost you, Boone? All right, JT Olsen's mailbag. Is Kendrick's music bad? I feel like his performance was good and the show was good, but I didn't like it. Is Kendrick just not good? Klotzy, we go to you.
No, okay.
We go to you on this
one. There's a couple, obviously. Kendrick isn't aiming towards my, what would be the word? My niche. He's not aiming towards that, but Kendrick Lamar, like the beats that he used, instrumental, he's not for everybody. Like if you like more upbeat rap, that's fine, but if you want to listen to lyrical rap, I like listening to lyrical type of stuff. So Kendrick's very good and he raps with the actual substance. He's not just spitting bullshit and just making up bars in 5 minutes and putting it into a song. Like you can tell he takes time to make his music, but it's not for everybody. I love Kendrick. He can do it all.
Hey, can you guys hear me now? Are we back?
I can hear you, Boone.
Yeah, who you building around? Hurts or Goff? You ain't getting away from that. Something happened. All right. Yeah, it's all right, but we don't have to answer. Yeah, no, I get it. Malik, mailbag, hypothetically speaking, if something goes off the rails next season, in parentheses, team collapses far out of the playoffs, what should happen the following offseason? So if something goes off the rails, see, it's hard because Malik, I'd want to know what went off the rails. What happened?
Yeah, depends on the situation.
Like, yeah, it depends. Like, if Goff just completely regresses and looks awful, then maybe it's time to have a conversation. I don't know. I mean, what's the situation? Who knows?
Coordinators, I mean, like the Eagles last year. The
coordinator?
coordinators just bad. You have to go out and get 2 new coordinators because the Eagles
it-
didn't change much. They brought in Saquon. They brought their pieces in to fill out that defense. But then those coordinators, they went and got 2 new coordinators. Worked out for them.
It just depends. I mean, like you said, if John Morton, the offense regresses, then fire John Morton. Move on. You know, like it's a very broad question, Malik. It's a good question, but it's a little broad. Weezy D, was it Jaden Ivey holding us back the whole time?
This is I was waiting for this one. This is a funny question.
I mean,
Jeff?
No,
the stutter.
No, he was not holding them back the entire time. Trajan literally went on 97.1 and said his loss, it was so bad, they had to go out and get Dennis Schroeder to help. Like, so how does that mean that he was holding them back? They literally got Dennis Schroeder to help out with the role that Jaden Ivey had. To them,
people are just asking good questions. That's all.
Yeah, this isn't that Weezy D, but I don't know what the question means there. I don't. Easy mailbag. How many series does Luka and LeBron win this year?
How many to win the championship? Four.
How many series do they win?
I think they win 2. I think they'll get to the finals, get the Western Conference Finals, and get bounced. I just think them not having anybody for a big is just fucked. Like, I think Denver's gonna. They don't want to see Denver. I think Denver's like matchup wise is terrible for them.
Yeah, it's always tough because the playoffs, like teams, you play a game in the regular season, you beat a team, but when you play a team 7 potential times, like they'll know. I mean, these coaches lock into what your weaknesses are. And I know it's LeBron and Luka. Like, that's why I think they'll win a series. I don't think they win that. I think they'll get past the first round and then lose.
If I'm being honest, what happened this weekend, the Mark Williams trade getting canceled, that to me hurts. Like, I thought if that goes through and you have Mark Williams, I would say they have a chance to win it all. Once that gets canceled and there's no more trade deadline, like, that's brutal. That's like a risk you have to take at a trade deadline. If you wait to the last minute and that happens, like that's a risk. I'm with you, Jeff. Like you have said it, like they need a big. They're just gonna have to address it in the offseason and next year kind of go all in.
Yeah. Next year, I'm picking that. I'm picking them next year.
For sure. I just don't think, like, honestly, it's tough. Like, I would love for them to go win it all, but without a big, like, who's their starting big now? Like, who's their 5?
Jackson Hayes. I mean,
yeah, that doesn't really move.
He's always hurt. I mean, yeah. Let's see here. All right. I'm missing a question here. Oh, wait. All right.
Happening.
Let's see. Okay, Dom. Yeah, I mean, Dom, what are we doing here? All right.
Stop. Is it fair to say the only tangible way Goff gets the better this offseason is putting 20. Dom's the hater. Isn't Dom the one that was
Jalen Milroe? Yeah.
Jalen Milroe is the best quarterback in the class.
We love you, Dom. D-Town Heat mailbag, rate 1 to 10. Serena Williams script walk during the halftime show. Well, you're asking a suburban white dude to rate it. Probably not the guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Not that guy, pal.
Super Bowl halftime, the pressure, the moment, give it a 10 out of 10. That's a big, to go out there and perform like that in that millions and millions of people watching, 10 out of 10.
Did you see Stephen A. Smith? You see what he said about her? He's like, man, if my girl flew all the way to the Super Bowl to dance, like, just to get back at her ex, I'd tell her to go be with him. Go be with him. That's what Stephen A. Smith said. He said, you can have her. She's for the streets.
Comedy, bro.
Yeah, so funny. He's like,
by the way,
my girl does all that to get back at her ex. She can go back to him.
Did you guys see the Dan Orlovsky was like he's stepping away for a bit? Obviously, it's the off season, so he doesn't have to do as much. So he's probably taking a break. But the way he said it was like he's like he might be gone for a little while at ESPN. Do you think maybe there's a chance he's like on that Saints staff? Kellen Moore?
Who?
Dan O.
I don't know.
Wait, I don't know if you saw that video. If you guys saw it
I think
today.
he said that because his contract's up, but he said he'd but you never know.
That's
I mean,
fair.
next season
Yeah.
he could get re-signed. He could be back.
I don't know if it was contract or if it was more so like he might be taking a job, so he doesn't know when he'll be done with that. I don't know.
He should leave ESPN anyways. He's going
Yeah.
Fox.
They
fuck.
shit on
He's like one of the smartest, and like he's entertaining too, bro. And they just like act like he's a fucking annoyance to be there.
They bully.
They Max Kellerman him.
No, they bully him. Like,
Yeah, and
Shannon,
it's
I
like-
love Shannon. I love Shay, but he said something. He said he called him an alien today because of his ears. Like, just
Hey, was there? You going to Mars?
yeah. He's like, fuck. Be like, what are we doing here? It's got. I'm with you, Klotz. Get him out of there.
He's my favorite. He's dialed in on
And,
Fox. Give him his own show. Oh my gosh,
Who always does him right too? Big Lou Riddick. Those two are dynamic together. Get Louis Riddick and
Lou
Dan
Riddick.
Orlovsky out of there. Send them to Fox.
Imagine if you gave those two just their own show together.
It's fair.
Klotzy, that's
Even
my
though-
guy. That's your guy. That's meeting of the minds, brother.
Hey, appreciate you all. Great show today. Appreciate the vent session. Hey, the point of today is to talk about how the Lions can get there. Okay, we want them to win a Super Bowl just as bad as you do. Appreciate you all. We'll be back tomorrow.
Jeff thinks he's a loser.
Yeah, that should be the takeaway. No, of course not. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate you all. Continue to support.
Love you
Subscribe.
guys.
We're like 30 away from 12.4. Okay, so big time.
Come on now.
All thanks to you guys. Until tomorrow, we will see you. Peace.
Peace.